There is a faint blue light in a quiet room, the only light, and it comes from a screen. It illuminates a face, but it doesn't warm it. It shows a thumb, moving, always moving, scrolling through a river of images and words that flows endlessly, a river that promises connection, entertainment, and knowledge, but delivers only a strange and hollow ache. Around this small island of light, the darkness is filled with ghosts, the ghosts of unfinished tasks, of emails that need a reply, of expectations from a world that is always on and always wanting more. There is no physical movement, yet there is a profound sense of exhaustion. This is a prison without bars, a form of labor that produces no value, only a quiet, persistent drain on the soul. This single image is a portrait of our time. We have become a civilization of people who are terrified of silence, who are lost without a task to perform, a distraction to consume. We are constantly, relentlessly doing. We do our jobs, we do our chores, we do our social media, we do our worrying, we do our planning for a future that never seems to arrive. Busyness has become our most prized possession, a badge of honor we wear to prove our worth, to ourselves and to others. But beneath this frantic activity, there is a deep and growing void, a sense of being disconnected, not just from each other, but from the very core of who we are. We run from the quiet moments, because in the quiet, we might have to face the unfiltered truth of our own minds, the restless anxieties, the unresolved sorrows, the deep existential questions we have pushed aside for so long. We have mastered the art of doing everything, except the simple art of just being. But what if the solution, the antidote to this modern madness, was not to do more, but to do less? What if the path to true strength and clarity was not found in action, but in stillness? There is an ancient wisdom, a path walked by countless souls before us, that offers not a complicated doctrine or a set of beliefs to adopt, but a practical science of the mind, a gentle, compassionate technology for understanding the nature of our own experience. It suggests that the way out of the prison of our own making is not to break down the walls, but to simply sit down and realize the door was never locked. It begins with the simplest, most profound instruction one can ever receive. It begins with the courage to just sit. Before we learn to sit, we must first understand what we are running from. And what we are running from, most of the time, is silence. Not the gentle, peaceful quiet of a forest at dawn, but the stark, unnerving silence that falls when all our distractions are stripped away. When the television is off, the podcast has ended, the phone is placed face down, and there is nothing left but the sound of the room and the hum of our own nervous system. In this moment, an instinct arises, a powerful, almost violent urge to fill the void, to reach for something, anything, to stand between us and the vast emptiness. This impulse is not a personal weakness, it is a defining condition of our age. For in that quiet, we are not met with emptiness, but with a roar, a deafening noise that erupts from within. It is the scream of a mind that has never been taught how to be still. This internal noise has a name in the Zen tradition. It is called the monkey mind. It is a perfect description. Picture a terrified monkey in a vast cage, shrieking, chattering, and flinging itself from one bar to another without a moment's rest. It swings from a branch of the past, replaying a conversation from yesterday, dissecting every word, cringing at a clumsy remark. Then, without warning, it leaps to a branch of the future, spinning out elaborate, terrifying fantasies of what might go wrong tomorrow, next week, next year. It chatters endlessly with to-do lists, with grocery lists, with worries about money, with judgments about our body, with the stinging words of an old insult. It is a relentless commentator on our lives, a harsh critic who lives inside our own head, and it never, ever stops talking. We think we are running from external silence, but we are not. We are running from this monkey. We use the noise of the world, the music, the news, the endless scrollers, a form of anesthetic, a way to drown out the screeching of our own untamed thoughts. The silence is terrifying because it is the room in which we are finally locked alone with this creature, and we have never been taught how to calm it, how to soothe it, or how to simply let it be. This internal condition is mercilessly exploited by the world we have built. We live inside something called the attention economy. It is a vast, invisible marketplace where the most valuable commodity is not gold or oil, but your conscious awareness, your attention. Every second you spend looking at a screen is a resource that has been mined, packaged, and sold to the highest bidder. Armies of the most brilliant minds in the world, behavioral psychologists and software engineers, have collaborated to design the systems you use every day with one purpose: to capture and hold your attention for as long as possible. The bright red dot of a notification, the infinite scroll that never lets you reach the bottom, the algorithm that learns your secret desires and fears better than you do. These are not neutral tools. They are precision engineered to hack your brain's ancient wiring. They exploit our primal need for novelty, for social approval, for the fear of being left out. And so we are conditioned, like a laboratory animal pressing a lever for a pellet, to seek the next little hit of stimulation. The next like, the next message, the next shocking headline. This system trains our mind to be in a constant state of restless expectation. It shortens our attention span and erodes our capacity for deep thought. It makes stillness feel not just uncomfortable, but physically unbearable, like a form of withdrawal from a powerful drug. The external world has become a co-conspirator with our monkey mind, each one feeding the other in a frantic, exhausting dance. There is an old story of a king, a man of immense power and immeasurable wealth. He had palaces of ivory and gardens that bloomed in every season. He commanded vast armies, and his storehouses overflowed with gold and jewels. He could have anything he desired with a single word, but he was a deeply unhappy man. His mind was a battlefield. His thoughts were a constant storm of ambition, paranoia, and regret. He slept little, and when he did, his dreams were filled with turmoil. He believed that the source of his misery was the world around him. The noise of the kingdom, he thought, was invading his peace. So he issued a radical decree. For one full day, the entire kingdom was to be plunged into absolute silence. The blacksmith's hammer would not fall. The wheels of the merchant's carts would not turn. Children were forbidden from laughing, dogs from barking. The entire population was to hold its breath, and so it was. A great, heavy silence fell over the land. The king sat on his throne, in his silent palace, in his silent city, and waited for peace to arrive. But it did not. In the absence of all external sound, the noise inside his own head became a deafening roar. He could hear the thunder of his own greed, the whispers of his own cruelty, the rattling chains of his own fear. It was louder, more terrifying than any noise his kingdom could ever produce. And in that moment, the king understood. The kingdom he needed to pacify was not the one outside of him. The noise he needed to quell was not in the streets. The problem was not the world. The problem, and the solution, resided entirely within the confines of his own mind. Like the king, we too have been taught to look for the source of our disquiet outside of ourselves. And we have been taught to measure our very existence by our level of activity. The first question we ask a stranger is not, "Who are you?" but "What do you do?" Our productivity has become fused with our identity. Our busyness has become our proof of life. We feel a deep, gnawing guilt when we are not doing something. To be still, to be unproductive, feels like a moral failing. It feels like we are being lazy, worthless, a waste of space. So we create endless lists of tasks. We fill our calendars until they are bursting. We run from one obligation to the next, not because they are all essential, but because the running itself keeps the existential dread at bay. It gives us a sense of purpose, however hollow. It creates the illusion of forward momentum. We become hamsters on a wheel, mistaking the frantic motion for genuine progress, too out of breath to notice we are not actually going anywhere. This relentless busyness is another layer of armor, another defense mechanism against the terrifying prospect of simply being with ourselves. It is a way to avoid the fundamental questions. Is this life meaningful? Am I happy? Who am I beneath all of this doing? And perhaps, at the very bottom of this well of fear, beneath the monkey mind, beneath the conditioning of the attention economy, beneath the conflation of busyness and worth, lies the great, unspoken terror, the fear of our own finitude, the deep, primal knowledge that this life, this body, this consciousness is temporary. The constant forward rush of activity, the obsessive planning for the future, is a grand strategy to outrun death. As long as we are busy preparing for tomorrow, we don't have to fully inhabit today. And to fully inhabit today means to be intimate with its fleeting, precious, and impermanent nature. Silence is a confrontation with the raw fact of existence. It is a direct encounter with the fragile, unadorned present moment. And the present moment is always tinged with the truth of its own passing. To be still is to feel the clock ticking, not in a morbid way, but in a real way. The noise, the busyness, the constant planning it is all a grand, elaborate project to pretend that we have forever. The silence reveals the truth. We don't. And this truth, while terrifying to the ego, is the very doorway to our liberation. So this is what we are up against. This is the scream we are running from. An untamed mind, a world designed to keep it restless, a culture that tells us we are what we do, and a deep, primal fear of our own impermanence. We have diagnosed the condition. We have seen the forces, both internal and external, that conspire to keep us from peace. To see this clearly, without judgment, is the first, most crucial step. To understand why we run is to begin to find the courage to stop. The question then becomes, not one of fighting this great storm, but of learning how to navigate it. The journey does not begin with a violent struggle or a great effort. It begins with something far gentler. It begins with the discovery of an anchor, a simple, reliable, and ever-present tool that can hold us steady in the midst of the hurricane. A tool we were all given the day we were born, but which we have long since forgotten how to use. In the heart of the storm we described, amidst the screaming of the untamed mind and the relentless pull of the world, a ship without an anchor is doomed. It will be thrown against the jagged rocks of past regrets, or lost in the disorienting fog of future anxieties. Our first task, then, is not to fight the storm, but to find our anchor. We must ask a fundamental question. In this moment, right now, what is truly real? Your thoughts about yesterday are not real now, they are ghosts. Your worries about tomorrow are not real now, they are phantoms. The stories you tell yourself about who you are, these are just collections of words. But there is something with you, in this very second, that is undeniably, physically, and presently real. Something that has been with you since your first moment of life, and will be with you until your last. It is the gentle, rhythmic, and constant miracle of your own breath. This is the anchor, the breath. It is the most humble and yet the most powerful tool we possess. Think of its qualities. It requires no belief system. It has no opinion. It does not judge you. It simply is. It is the quiet, unassuming soundtrack to your entire existence. Most of the time, it operates in the background, a faithful servant managing the precious exchange of life-giving air without any conscious effort. But here is its secret power. It can be brought into the light of awareness at any time. The breath is the perfect bridge between the unconscious and the conscious, between the body and the mind. And most importantly, the breath exists only in the present moment. You cannot take a breath that is in the past. You cannot inhale a future breath. The breath you are taking right now, as you hear these words, is the only breath that exists. To bring your awareness to your breathing is, by definition, to bring your awareness into the here and now. It is the ultimate antidote to the time-traveling monkey mind. So how do we use this anchor? The instruction is radical in its simplicity. We do not need to do anything to the breath. We do not need to control it, or force it, or change it into some special, deep, meditative pattern. The practice is not one of doing, but of noticing, of becoming intimate with a sensation that has been with you your entire life. Right now, can you feel it? Perhaps you can feel the air as it enters your nostrils, a little cooler on the way in, a little warmer on the way out. You don't have to imagine it, just feel the raw sensation. Or perhaps it's easier to notice the gentle rise and fall of your abdomen, like a calm tide. Place a hand there if you need to. Feel the belly expand softly on the in-breath and gently release on the out-breath. There is no right or wrong way to feel it. The only goal is to let your attention rest lightly on one of these sensations, to simply be with it. It is an act of reunion, of coming home to your own body, to the simple, undeniable fact that you are alive, right here, right now. Inevitably, the moment you try to do this, the monkey mind will rebel. It will become bored. It will tell you this is a waste of time. It will dangle a juicy worry in front of you, or a fascinating memory, and your attention will leap away from the breath and follow it. This is not a failure. This is the practice. The moment you realize your mind has wandered, that is a moment of pure, victorious mindfulness. In that moment, you have woken up from the dream of thought. And what do you do when you wake up? You don't scold yourself. You don't get frustrated. You treat yourself with the same gentle kindness you would offer a lost puppy. You simply, gently, guide your attention back to the anchor, back to the feeling of the breath. One more time. You might have to do this 10 times in a single minute, 100 times. It does not matter. Every single time you return to the breath, you are strengthening the muscle of your attention. You are carving a new neural pathway in your brain. You are gently teaching the monkey mind that you are no longer at its mercy. You are training it to rest. There is a beautiful story of a young, eager student who comes to a Zen master, his face a mask of frustration. He says, "Master, I am trying to meditate, but I cannot do it. My mind is an ocean in a storm. The waves of my thoughts are enormous. They crash over me, and I am powerless. I cannot make them stop." The old master looks at the student with a deep, compassionate smile and says, "You have misunderstood the task. You were not born to command the ocean. The waves are the nature of the mind. They are not your enemy. You were born to be a surfer." The student, confused, replied, "But master, I have no surfboard." The Zen master's smile widened. "Oh, but you do," he said. "It has been with you since your first moment. It is your breath. The breath is your surfboard. When a great wave of anger or fear or sadness rises up, you do not try to flatten it. That is impossible. Instead, you turn your attention to your surfboard, to the steady, reliable presence of your breath beneath you. You feel its stability, and you ride the energy of that wave with skill and balance until it naturally, peacefully subsides back into the great ocean of the mind. This metaphor is not just poetry. It points to a deep physiological truth. Your mental state and your breathing pattern are locked in an intimate feedback loop. When you feel anxious or frightened, your breath becomes shallow, rapid, and erratic, held high in the chest. This pattern of breathing sends a powerful signal to your nervous system. Danger, threat, prepare for fight or flight. This, in turn, creates more feelings of anxiety, which makes the breath even more restricted. It is a vicious cycle. But the breath is the magic key that can break this loop. Because it is an autonomic function that we can also consciously influence, it provides a direct line of communication to the deepest parts of our brain. When you intentionally bring a gentle, non-judgmental awareness to your breath, it naturally begins to slow down, to deepen, to become more regular. This calm, steady rhythm sends a new signal to your nervous system. All is well, you are safe, you can relax. The mind follows the breath. As the tide of the breath becomes calm and steady, the stormy waves of thought begin to lose their terrifying power. They may still arise, but they do so on the surface of a much calmer sea. The breath, then, is our most loyal and skillful guide. It is always with us, waiting patiently for our attention. It asks for nothing, it costs nothing. It is the anchor that can hold us steady in the storm of our own thoughts. It is the surfboard that allows us to ride the waves of our emotions with grace. It is the quiet rhythm that brings us out of the phantoms of past and future and delivers us directly into the living reality of the present moment. It is the ultimate act of coming home. We have now found our anchor. We have our surfboard. The next step is to learn how to use it. We need a place, a posture, a form that embodies this intention of stillness and wakefulness. We need to learn the simple, radical, and transformative art of how to just sit. We have found our anchor in the breath, our faithful companion that holds us in the living reality of the present moment. The logical mind, the mind conditioned by our culture of achievement, now asks the next question. Good, I have the anchor. What do I do with it? What is the objective? How do I use this breath to achieve a state of peace, to defeat my anxiety, to win at meditation? This is the voice of striving, the voice that sees life as a series of problems to be solved and goals to be accomplished. The wisdom of Zen offers an answer that is so simple, so profound, and so deeply counterintuitive to our modern sensibilities that it can feel like a revolution. The answer to, "What should I do?" is this: nothing. The instruction is not to do anything at all. The instruction is simply to sit. In Japanese Zen, this practice has a name, shikantaza. It translates, quite literally, to just sitting. It is the heart of the practice, and yet it is the most easily misunderstood. It is not a technique to get somewhere else. It is not a method for producing a special feeling. In many forms of meditation, there is an explicit goal. You might visualize a healing light filling your body. You might practice cultivating a feeling of boundless love and compassion. You might repeat a mantra to achieve a state of focused calm. These are all valuable and powerful practices, but shikantaza is different. It is the practice of no goal. In just sitting, states of peace might arise, feelings of compassion might blossom, moments of profound clarity might dawn. But these are seen as byproducts, like the scent of a flower. They are not the goal. If you make them the goal, you have already lost the way. The goal of just sitting is just to sit. This is the great paradox, and in it lies the secret to true freedom. The very act of striving, of trying to attain peace, is the engine of our suffering. It is a subtle but powerful declaration that this present moment, right here, right now, is not enough. It is flawed, it is lacking, it needs to be improved or escaped from. This striving is the signature of the monkey mind. It is always looking for the next branch, the better branch, a future state of being that is more peaceful, more enlightened, more complete than this one. Just sitting is a radical act of rebellion against this tendency. It is a profound gesture of trust. By sitting down without an agenda, without a destination, you are making a powerful statement. This moment, exactly as it is complete. My breath, as it is complete. The sounds in the room as they are complete. My mind, with all its messiness and chatter, is also, in its own way, complete. Peace is not a distant shore you must struggle to reach. It is the very ground you are standing on, which you can only discover once you finally stop running. There is a famous Zen story about a young, ambitious monk named Mazu, who would spend all day, every day, sitting in meditation with tremendous effort. He was determined to become enlightened. His master, Nanyu, saw this, and one day he sat down near Mazu, picked up an ordinary roof tile, and began rubbing it intently with a stone. The scraping sound finally broke Mazu's concentration. "Honorable master," he asked, "what are you doing?" Nanyu replied calmly, without looking up, "I am polishing this tile to make it a mirror." Mazu was baffled. "But master," he said, "that's impossible. You can never make a mirror by polishing a tile." The master dropped the tile, looked directly at his student, and said, "And you are right. So how can you expect to become a Buddha by forcing yourself to sit? If you want to move a cart, do you whip the cart or do you whip the ox?" In that moment, Mazu understood. His body, sitting rigidly on the cushion, was just the cart. His striving, his ambition, his desperate effort, that was the useless whipping of the cart. The ox was his own fundamental mind, his true nature. The task was not to force the body to produce a result, but to understand the nature of the mind that was driving it. Just sitting is the practice of letting the ox be, of unhitching it from the cart of our ambition, and allowing it to find its own way in its own time. So how do we take this seat? What is the physical form of this practice? First, let go of the images of pretzel-like yogis in magazines. You do not need to force your body into a painful, full lotus position. The purpose of the posture is not acrobatic, but to create a physical container for awareness that is both stable and alert. You can sit on a cushion on the floor, on a small meditation bench, or even on a straight-back chair. If you use a chair, simply keep your feet flat on the floor and your back straight, not leaning against the chair back. The foundational principle is an upright spine. Imagine your spine is a stack of golden coins, balanced one on top of the other. Or imagine a delicate silk thread attached to the very crown of your head, gently pulling you upward toward the sky. This dignified, upright posture is crucial. A slumped spine invites dullness and sleep. An upright spine cultivates a natural alertness and wakefulness. Your shoulders should be relaxed. Your hands can rest comfortably in your lap, perhaps with one hand holding the other, the thumbs lightly touching to form an oval. This is not a mystical gesture, but a practical one. It unifies the body and gives the hands a place to rest. Your eyes are typically kept gently open, with the gaze soft and unfocused, resting on the floor a few feet in front of you. This is important. It keeps the practice grounded in the room, in this reality, preventing it from becoming a sleepy, internal daydream. The body is still, stable, alert, a mountain. From the outside, a person practicing just sitting may look like the most passive person in the world, but internally, it is the most active thing one can possibly do. You are not zoning out. You are not numbing yourself. You are actively, courageously participating in the totality of reality as it unfolds, moment by moment. You are being a silent, intimate witness to the entire universe. The sensation of air on your skin, the feeling of the cushion supporting your weight, the distant drone of traffic, the taste in your mouth, the subtle shifts in light and shadow, the endless parade of thoughts, feelings, and memories that march across the screen of your consciousness. To sit still and be present for all of this, without judging it, without grasping it, without pushing it away, requires immense strength and courage. It is an act of quiet defiance in a world that screams for your attention and demands that you be anywhere but here. You are not doing nothing. You are doing the one thing that matters most. You are showing up for your own life. Ultimately, shikantaza, this art of just sitting, is a practice of profound and radical trust. It is the embodiment of faith, not in an external deity, but in your own intrinsic nature, It is the trust that you are already whole. You do not need to add anything to yourself or take anything away. You are not a problem to be solved. You are a reality to be experienced. All that is required is for you to provide the conditions for this realization to dawn, to take your seat, to establish your posture, to anchor your awareness in the simple rhythm of the breath, and to allow everything to be exactly as it is. It is an invitation to stop whipping the cart and to simply be with the ox. And as we begin this practice, as we give ourselves this radical permission to simply be, one of the first things we discover with a newfound, startling clarity is the nature of the mind's ceaseless activity itself. We are no longer lost in the story, we are watching the storyteller. And this naturally leads us to ask, what exactly is this river of thought, and what is our relationship to it? As you take your seat, as you settle into the quiet dignity of your posture and bring your attention to the anchor of your breath, you will inevitably discover that you have walked into a movie theater. The show is already in progress, and it has been playing for your entire life. On the screen of your consciousness, a film projects itself, non-stop. It is a chaotic, disjointed, and often repetitive movie, filled with scenes from your past, commercials for your future worries, and a constant, scrolling news ticker of self-judgment. Our habitual way of being is to be completely lost in this film. We identify with the main character so thoroughly that we believe we are the character. We are tossed about by the plot, celebrating the triumphs, weeping at the tragedies, and cowering at the frightening parts. We are so absorbed in the drama that we forget we are sitting in a theater. The first great step in the journey of awakening is to simply realize this, to lean back in your seat, feel the anchor of your breath, and for the first time, to simply watch the movie without being completely consumed by it. This is the art of observing thought. To help us do this, the great masters have offered a beautiful and profound metaphor. Your mind, your true nature, your fundamental awareness is like the sky. It is vast, open, boundless, and clear. By its very nature, it is peaceful and unperturbed. It has been there since the beginning, and it is always, silently, present. Your thoughts, your emotions, your sensations, and your memories, these are like the clouds. They appear in the sky, but they are not the sky itself. Some clouds are light, white, and puffy, like a pleasant memory or a happy thought. Others are dark, heavy, and full of thunder and lightning, like a fit of anger, a wave of grief, or a storm of anxiety. Some are just thin, wispy streaks that are barely noticeable. The clouds are constantly changing, constantly moving, constantly coming and going. But the sky itself is never changed, harmed, or stained by the content of the clouds. A thunderstorm doesn't break the sky. It simply passes through the sky. When the storm is over, the sky is just as clear and blue as it was before. Our greatest mistake, the source of so much of our suffering, is that we forget we are the sky and we believe we are the clouds. When a dark cloud of sadness appears, we point to it and say, "I am sad." When a turbulent storm of anger roars through, we say, "I am angry." We fuse our entire identity with the temporary weather pattern of the mind. The practice of mindfulness is the gentle, moment-to-moment process of shifting this identity. It is the practice of remembering that you are the sky. Instead of saying, "I am angry," we can learn to recognize, there is anger arising in me. A storm cloud is passing through. Instead of, "I am a worrier," we can learn to see, the habit of worry is present right now. This is not just a clever word game. This subtle shift in language creates a space. It breaks the spell of identification. It allows us to hold our experiences, even the most painful ones, with a sense of spaciousness and compassion, knowing that they, like every cloud that has ever been, will eventually pass. You are not the weather. You are the sky that holds all the weather. To cultivate this sky-like mind, we can use a simple and practical technique. It is the practice of gently labeling or noting our thoughts. As you sit, anchored in your breath, you will notice the mind being pulled away. The moment you notice this, you have already woken up. Instead of getting frustrated, you can gently, softly make a mental note of what pulled you away. If you find yourself rehearsing an argument, you can just label it in your mind, thinking or rehearsing. If you are fantasizing about a future vacation, you can note planning or dreaming. If you are feeling a tightness in your shoulders, you can note sensation. If you hear a bird singing outside, you can note hearing. The label should be soft, light, and non-judgmental, like a feather touching a balloon. Its purpose is not to analyze the thought, but to simply recognize it as a mental event, to see it objectively rather than being swept away by its content. And after you make the note, the instruction is always the same. You gently, kindly guide your awareness back to the anchor of the breath, back to the feeling of the air in your nostrils, or the rise and fall of your abdomen. The noting is the acknowledgement, the return is the training. It is a practice of catching the mind and gently releasing it, over and over again. This simple practice helps us to avoid a common trap, the trap of the second arrow. Imagine you are walking through the forest and you are accidentally shot by an arrow. That is painful. That is the first arrow. In life, first arrows are unavoidable. Painful events happen. Difficult thoughts and emotions arise. A thought of anxiety is a first arrow. But what do we usually do? We immediately take out another arrow and shoot ourselves. This is the second arrow, the arrow of our reaction. The anxious thought arises, first arrow, and then we think, oh no, I'm anxious again. What's wrong with me? I'm so bad at this. I'll never be happy. This feeling is terrible. All of this commentary, this judgment, this storytelling, this is the second arrow. It is the thinking about the thinking, and it is almost always more painful and causes more suffering than the first arrow ever did. The practice of noting helps us to see the first arrow clearly, to acknowledge it, worrying, but it gives us the precious space to choose not to fire the second arrow of self-judgment. We allow the first arrow to be there, without adding a new layer of self-inflicted pain. There is a powerful Zen parable about a man who was meditating in his small boat on a calm, misty lake. He had his eyes closed, feeling the gentle rocking of the water, abiding in a state of peace. Suddenly, with a loud thud, another boat crashed into his, jolting him from his tranquility. He was filled with a surge of rage. He opened his eyes, ready to scream a torrent of abuse at the idiot who had so carelessly smashed into him and ruined his meditation. He turned to face the culprit, his face contorted in anger, and then he stopped. The other boat was empty. It must have broken loose from its moorings upstream and simply drifted down the current into him. In that single instant, all of his anger evaporated. It vanished completely. How can you be angry at an empty boat? There was no one to blame, nothing to attack. It was just an event that happened. The great teachers tell us that our thoughts are just like that empty boat. They drift out of the vast unknown and bump into our consciousness. Our immediate habit is to assume there is a hostile captain at the helm, to believe there is a solid, purposeful me who is thinking these thoughts, and we react with anger, fear, or attachment. The practice of observation reveals the truth. The boat is empty. Thoughts arise from a complex web of causes and conditions, but there is no solid, separate thinker directing them. When we see this deeply, our need to react begins to dissolve. The gift of this practice, the fruit of seeing our thoughts as clouds and as empty boats, is the gift of space. A sacred pause opens up between the stimulus, the thought or feeling, and our response. Before, an insulting thought might arise, and an angry word would immediately fly out of our mouth. A worry would appear, and our body would immediately tense up in a knot of anxiety. There was no space. Stimulus and response were fused together. Through observation, we create a buffer. Now, the insulting thought arises, but we see it. Judging. We feel the heat of anger in the body. We watch it, and in that space of watching, we have a choice. We are no longer a slave to the thought. We can choose to let it go. We can choose not to speak. We can choose to return to the breath. This is not suppression, which is a violent act of pushing something down. This is wisdom, which is the act of seeing something so clearly that it no longer has power over you. You are creating a space of freedom within your own mind. You are moving from being a prisoner of your thoughts to being the spacious, compassionate warden of your own mind. You are not the thoughts. You are the loving awareness that witnesses them. And as you sit, day after day, watching these clouds, you begin to notice a universal law that governs them all. You notice, without a doubt, that every single one of them, no matter how beautiful or how terrifying, shares one single characteristic. They arise, they stay for a while, and then they vanish. This direct, personal, and undeniable insight into the nature of change is the doorway to one of the most profound truths of existence. As we sit in the quiet laboratory of our own awareness, watching the endless parade of thoughts, feelings, and sensations, we begin to notice a universal truth. It is not a philosophy we need to adopt, nor a belief we must accept on faith. It is a direct, observable law of nature, as fundamental as gravity. We see that every cloud of thought, no matter how solid it seems, eventually dissolves. Every wave of emotion, no matter how powerful, eventually crests and subsides. Every sound that enters our field of awareness arises, lingers for a moment, and then vanishes. Every sensation in the body, an itch, a warmth, a pressure is in a constant state of flux. This fundamental reality, this cosmic rhythm of arising and passing, has a name in the ancient language of the Buddha. It is called anicca, our nature. It means impermanence. And understanding it, not just intellectually, but deep in our bones, is the key that unlocks the door to a wiser, freer, and more graceful way of living. Our meditation cushion is the perfect place to study this law. It is here we discover that our experience of reality is not a series of solid, separate snapshots, but a flickering, flowing, continuous stream. We are not observing a collection of static things. We are witnessing a dynamic process. The sound of a distant siren appears in your consciousness. It grows louder, holds your attention, and then fades into silence. It is born, it lives, and it dies, all within a few seconds. An ache begins to grow in your knee. It builds in intensity, screaming for your attention. You watch it, you breathe with it, and you notice that even within the ache, there are subtle pulses, vibrations, and shifts. And then, perhaps, it softens, changes its character, or disappears entirely, replaced by another sensation. A feeling of profound peace might descend upon you, a sense of blissful calm. It feels wonderful, and the mind immediately thinks, "This is it, I've finally got it." But if you keep watching, you will see that this state, too, is impermanent. It will eventually fade, giving way to something else. The cushion is our classroom, and anicca is the only subject on the curriculum. If the nature of everything is to change, to flow, to be impermanent, then we can begin to understand the primary source of our own psychological suffering. Suffering, in the Buddhist sense, arises from our deep-seated resistance to this fundamental law. It is the result of our tragic and futile war against the way things are. We live in a constant struggle, trying to make permanent that which is, by its very nature, fleeting. This struggle takes two primary forms: clinging and aversion. First, we cling. When we experience something pleasant, a moment of joy, the flush of new love, a sense of accomplishment, the taste of delicious food. Our mind immediately grasps onto it. It says, I like this, I want more of this, I don't want this to end. We try to freeze the moment, to possess it, to build a fortress around it. But because reality is a river, not a fortress, the moment inevitably flows by. Our clinging then turns into disappointment, nostalgia, and a sense of loss. Our attachment to the pleasant guarantees our future suffering. The other side of this struggle is aversion. When we experience something unpleasant, physical pain, a difficult emotion like fear or shame, a moment of failure or rejection, our mind's immediate reaction is to push it away. It says, I don't like this, get it away from me, this shouldn't be happening. We resist, we tense up, we fight against the reality of the moment. This resistance is like trying to build a dam against the river of life. It takes an enormous amount of energy, and it creates immense tension and stress. The unpleasant experience itself is the first arrow. Our resistance to it is the second, self-inflicted arrow that causes the real suffering. The truth is, whether we are clinging to the pleasant or pushing away the unpleasant, we are engaged in the same futile activity. We are arguing with reality, and reality always wins. There is a tale of a poet and a Zen master walking together through a garden. They came upon the most exquisite rose, in perfect, full bloom. Its color was a deep, velvety crimson, and its fragrance filled the air. The poet, a man of deep feeling, looked at the rose and began to weep. The Zen master asked him, "Why do you cry?" The poet replied, "I cry for the beauty of this flower. It is perfect, but I know that in a day, its petals will start to wilt. In a week, it will be gone. Its perfection is temporary, and the thought of its passing fills my heart with sorrow." The Zen master listened patiently, and then he smiled. "You are mistaken," he said. "You believe that the flower's beauty is diminished by the fact that it will fade. But I see that it is beautiful precisely because it will fade. Its transient, fleeting nature is the very thing that makes it so precious. If this rose were made of glass or silk, if it lasted for 1,000 years, would it truly be beautiful, or would it just be an object? It is the dance with death, the brief, brilliant, unrepeatable flicker of life that gives it its soul. Anicca is not the enemy of beauty. It is the condition that makes beauty possible. This understanding is also the greatest source of hope we can find. The law of impermanence is a double-edged sword, and its other edge is one of profound consolation. If everything changes, then our pain, our sorrow, our anxiety, and our despair are also impermanent. They are not a life sentence. They are not a permanent stain on our being. They are simply weather patterns passing through the vast sky of our awareness. When you are in the midst of a dark storm of depression or a panic attack, your mind will tell you, with absolute conviction, this will last forever. This is the new reality. You will never feel good again. The wisdom of Anicca allows us to hear that voice and to know, with a deeper certainty, that it is lying. No storm lasts forever. The clouds will always part. This knowledge doesn't necessarily make the pain disappear in an instant, but it gives us the strength to endure it. It allows us to hold our suffering with more compassion and less fear, knowing that it is a temporary visitor, not a permanent resident. It is just a cloud, and we are the sky. The great teaching of Anicca is like the sermon of a river. If you watch a river, you see it is never the same river twice. The water is always new, always flowing. Our lives are just like this. To live wisely is to learn how to move in harmony with this flow. Our suffering comes from trying to fight the current. We build our dams of attachment, trying to stop the flow and hold on to a particular moment, only to have the pressure build up and eventually break our structures. Or we try to paddle furiously upstream, against the current of what is, exhausted by our resistance to unpleasant truths. The path of wisdom is to learn to become a skillful boatman. It is to get into our boat and to trust the flow of the river of life. This doesn't mean being passive. It means being exquisitely aware. It means learning to read the currents, to navigate around the rocks, to use the river's own energy to move forward. It means embracing the whole journey, the calm stretches, the turbulent rapids, the beginnings and the endings. It is the art of letting go of the illusion of control and replacing it with the skill of wise participation. To see impermanence, really see it, is to be liberated from the exhausting burden of fighting the universe. It allows us to cherish the good moments more fully, knowing they are precious and fleeting. It allows us to bear the difficult moments with more grace, knowing they too shall pass. It is to understand that life is not a solid state, but a fluid dance. And as we sit and watch this endless dance of arising and passing, of our body changing, our feelings shifting, our thoughts dissolving anew, even more profound question naturally begins to form in the quiet of our mind. If everything I experience is in constant flux, if every component of my being is impermanent, then what about the I that seems to be at the center of it all? What is this self that I work so hard to please and protect? If all the parts of the cart are constantly changing, what is the nature of the cart itself? This question leads us to the very edge of our conventional understanding of who we are, and into the heart of the Buddha's most radical teaching. We have walked through the garden of our own experience and witnessed the truth of anicca, the universal law of impermanence. We have seen how everything we can possibly perceive, every thought, every feeling, every sight and sound is in a state of constant, relentless flow. This leads us to the most profound and personal question a human being can ask. If everything is changing, who is the one who is watching all this change? We have a powerful, gut-level feeling of being a solid, continuous I. We feel like a driver sitting behind the eyes, a CEO in the control tower of the mind, a constant, unchanging presence that has been with us since childhood. We refer to this I 100 times a day. I am happy. I want this. I think that. But what is this I? Is it real? The Buddha's most radical, most challenging, and most liberating teaching offers a revolutionary answer. This teaching is called anatta, anatta, often translated as non-self. This does not mean that you do not exist. You are clearly here. What it means is that you do not exist as a separate, solid, permanent entity. The self you feel to be so solid is, in fact, an illusion. To understand this, let us turn to a famous encounter that took place over 2,000 years ago between a Greek king named Milinda and a Buddhist sage named Nagasena. King Milinda was a sharp, intellectual ruler who was skeptical of the Buddhist teachings. He arrived for his meeting with Nagasena in a magnificent war chariot. After the initial greetings, Nagasena used the king's own chariot as a teaching tool. He asked, "Your Majesty, you say you arrived in a chariot. Please, tell me, what is this chariot? Is it the wheels?" The king replied, "No, venerable sir." Nagasena continued, "Is it the axle? Is it the wooden frame, the reins, the yoke, the whip?" To each question, the king answered no. Then Nagasena said, "Is the chariot something different from all of its parts combined?" The king had to admit that it was not. Nagasena then delivered the crucial point. "Your Majesty, I cannot seem to find this chariot. Chariot is just a name, a convenient label we give to a collection of parts, assembled in a particular way. But there is no independent, essential chariot soul that exists apart from its components. It is empty of any inherent self." King Milinda, being a wise man, understood the logic. Nagasena then brought the lesson home. "Just so, Your Majesty," he said, gesturing to himself. "The name Nagasena is just a convenient label for this collection of body, feelings, perceptions, habits, and consciousness. If you search for a permanent, independent soul or self called Nagasena, you will not find one. This deconstruction of the chariot is precisely what the Buddha taught us to do with our own sense of self. He provided a practical framework for this investigation, known as the 5 skandhas, or the 5 aggregates. These are the 5 heaps, the 5 collections of parts, that we mistake for a solid I. The first is form. This is your physical body, your bones, your blood, your skin, your breath. It is easy to see that this is not a permanent self. It is constantly changing, aging, getting sick, getting well. It is made of the food you ate, the water you drank, the air you breathe. It is a process, not a thing. The second is feeling. This refers to the raw sensations that arise whenever there is contact between your senses and the world, pleasant, unpleasant, or neutral. These feelings are as fickle as the weather, changing from moment to moment. You are not your feelings. The third is perception. This is the cognitive function of recognizing and labeling. Your eye sees a patch of green, and your perception labels it tree. Your ear hears a vibration, and your perception labels it music. This is also a fleeting mental event, not a solid self. The fourth aggregate is mental formations. This is a broad category that includes all of our habits, our intentions, our impulses, our biases, our desires, and our fears. It is the collection of our personality traits and conditioned responses. These are not a core you. They are patterns created by past actions and experiences. They can be changed, retrained, and purified. They are not a static essence. The fifth and final aggregate is consciousness. This is the faculty of awareness itself, the light that knows the other 4 aggregates. There is seeing consciousness, hearing consciousness, smelling consciousness, thinking consciousness. But even this awareness is not a solid, monolithic thing. It arises dependently. Seeing consciousness only arises when there is an I and a visible object. It is not a permanent soul that looks out, but a flickering light that sparks into existence when conditions are right. When you look at this list, you must ask, where is the I? Is it in the body, in the feelings, in the perceptions, habits, or awareness? Or is it, like the chariot, simply a convenient label for the temporary coming together of these 5 changing processes? The deep insight of anatta is that I is a verb, not a noun. It is a process of ing, not a static entity called I. You are a river of these 5 changing streams, not a solid rock on the riverbank. This is not a theory to be believed. It is an experience to be had, right here on the meditation cushion. As you sit in silence, you investigate. A thought arises. I need to call my mother. You look closely. You can see the thought, but can you find the thinker? Where is it? Who is authoring these thoughts? If you look honestly, you find that thoughts simply appear in awareness, unbidden, like the empty boat drifting into your own. A feeling of sadness arises. You look for the feeler. Can you find a solid entity that is sad? Or is there just the sensation of sadness itself, a wave of energy passing through the body and mind? This direct, honest investigation systematically undermines our lifelong, unexamined belief in a solid self. The initial reaction to this teaching can be one of fear. If I am not a self, am I nothing? Is life meaningless? But this is a misunderstanding. The teaching of non-self is not a nihilistic declaration of non-existence. It is the ultimate unburdening. The belief in a solid, separate self is the root of so much of our anxiety and suffering. This little me is a fragile thing. We spend our entire lives in a state of anxious defense, trying to protect it, promote it, and puff it up. We are terrified of it being criticized, insulted, or ignored. We are heartbroken when it doesn't get what it wants. This ego self is a prison, and we are its lifelong anxious warden. The insight into anatta is the key that unlocks the prison door. When you see that the self is not a solid thing, there is so much less to defend. Criticism becomes just words. Failure becomes just an experience, not an indictment of your core being. The heavy, exhausting burden of maintaining and defending this fragile identity begins to fall away. Furthermore, non-self does not lead to a sense of cosmic loneliness, but to the exact opposite, a profound sense of interconnection. The illusion of a separate self is what makes us feel isolated and cut off from the world. When you see through this illusion, you realize that you are not, and have never been, separate. The you that is experiencing this moment is a temporary confluence of the entire universe. You are made of stardust. You are made of the sunlight that grew the plants you eat. You are made of the history of your ancestors and the culture that shaped you. Every atom in your body was forged in a distant star. You are not a lonely island. You are a wave in the single ocean of existence. Seeing this deeply destroys the very root of selfishness and is the ultimate foundation for true compassion. How can you harm another when you realize, at the most fundamental level, that they are not separate from you? The teaching of anatta is the ultimate invitation to relax, to put down the heavy statue of me that you have been carrying on your back for your entire life. It is the discovery that the CEO in the control tower was a phantom, and that the whole system can run perfectly well and far more gracefully on its own. We have now looked at two of the great marks of existence. We have seen that all our conditioned experiences are impermanent and in constant flux anicca, and we have seen that there is no fixed, solid, independent self to be found amidst this flux anatta. So, here we are, a flowing process in a flowing world. What happens when this process, driven by its habits, constantly tries to grasp onto permanent pleasures and push away permanent pains for a self that doesn't even exist in the way it thinks it does? The inevitable result of this fundamental friction between our desires and reality is a pervasive, underlying sense of dissatisfaction, stress, and unease. This is the third great mark of existence, the truth of dukkha. We have now arrived at the heart of the Buddha's first and most famous teaching, a truth that is often misunderstood and which can sound, at first, deeply pessimistic. It is the truth of dukkha, dukkha. This ancient Pali word is most commonly translated as suffering, and so the teaching is often presented as life is suffering. For the Western ear, accustomed to optimism and the pursuit of happiness, this can sound like a grim and hopeless verdict on the human condition. But this is a profound mistranslation of a far more subtle and nuanced concept. To understand dukkha is not to become a pessimist, but to become a realist. It is to finally, and with great compassion, acknowledge the true nature of our experience. Dukkha is not just about the gross, overt pain of tragedy or despair. Think of it less as a gaping wound and more as a tiny, persistent thorn stuck in your heel. It's a constant, low-grade source of irritation that you are so accustomed to, you barely even notice it anymore. Yet it affects every single step you take. Or think of it as a finely crafted wheel on a cart that is just slightly, almost imperceptibly, off-center. The ride will never be perfectly smooth. There will always be a subtle, jarring vibration, a background hum of friction and stress. This is dukkha. It is the pervasive sense of unsatisfactoriness, the feeling that things are never quite right, the inherent tension that comes from being a conditioned human being in a constantly changing world. It is the baseline human condition of dis-ease. The Buddha, like a master physician, broke this diagnosis down into three distinct types. The first is the most obvious, dukkha, dukkha, or the pain of pain. This is the suffering that everyone recognizes. It is the pain of a sick body, the sorrow of losing a loved one, the sting of failure, the fear that comes with a frightening diagnosis, the despair of heartbreak. It is the raw, unavoidable pain of birth, aging, sickness, and death. It is the first arrow, the wound that life inevitably inflicts upon us all. No one is immune to this layer of dukkha. The second type is more subtle. It is called viparinama dukkha, the pain of change. This form of suffering arises directly from the truth of anicca, or impermanence. This is the suffering that comes from the fact that our happiness is fleeting. We achieve a long-sought goal, and the joy lasts for a week before a new ambition takes its place. We fall in love, and that initial, intoxicating bliss eventually matures into something quieter, or perhaps fades away entirely. We are on a perfect vacation, and the knowledge that it will soon end casts a subtle shadow over our enjoyment. This is the suffering of loss, not just of people, but of moments, of youth, of health, of pleasurable states. It is the pain baked into our attachment to things that, by their very nature, cannot last. We build our house of happiness on the shifting sands of an impermanent world, and we are constantly surprised and pained when the tides of change wash it away. The third and most profound layer is sankhara dukkha, the pain of conditioned existence itself. This is the subtle background hum of unsatisfactoriness that is woven into the very fabric of our being as a self. It arises from the friction we explored earlier, the friction between the truth of anicca and anatta, and our mind's deep-seated habits. It is the inherent stress of being a composite entity, a collection of 5 changing aggregates that is constantly trying to secure its footing on unstable ground. It is the tension of having to maintain and defend a fragile ego. It is the subtle, ever-present vulnerability of our existence. This is the off-center wheel. We are so used to this background static of anxiety and restlessness that we consider it normal. It is the water the fish swims in, completely unaware of its existence, until, through the practice of mindfulness, it is lifted out of it for the first time and can finally see the medium in which it has been living. The Buddha was not content to simply name the disease. He was a doctor who also diagnosed its cause. The cause of dukkha, he taught, is tanha. This word means thirst, craving, or clinging. It is the relentless grasping of the mind, which is itself fueled by a fundamental ignorance of reality. Because we don't see the world as it is, anicca and anatta, we are constantly thirsting for permanent pleasures, for a permanent self. This thirst takes 3 forms: the craving for pleasant sense experiences, the craving to become something more or different, and the craving to get rid of what is unpleasant. It is this constant cycle of wanting and not wanting, of grasping and pushing away, that turns the wheel of dukkha. Dukkha is the gap between our craving and the reality that can never fully satisfy it. To illustrate how we create our own suffering on top of life's inherent pain, the Buddha offered the powerful parable of the second arrow. Imagine a person is walking through the woods and is struck by an arrow. This causes pain. It is a real physical wound. This is the first arrow, the unavoidable dukkha of life. But what is the person's typical reaction? They immediately cry out, "Why me? This is terrible. I can't believe this happened. This is a disaster." They become consumed by a storm of anger, self-pity, and fear. They obsess over the wound, projecting a catastrophic future. This entire mental proliferation, this story of woe, is the second arrow that they shoot into themselves. The Buddha taught that while the first arrow is painful, the second arrow is what we call suffering. It is optional, it is self-inflicted. The practice of mindfulness is the art of learning to feel the pain of the first arrow without firing the second. We can acknowledge the pain. There is pain here, without adding the story. This is terrible, and my life is ruined. We learn to care for the initial wound without poisoning ourselves with a secondary infection of reactivity. Your meditation cushion is the perfect laboratory to observe this entire process. You sit down, and after a few minutes, a sharp pain arises in your knee. That is the first arrow. It is dukkha dukkha. Then, the mind's commentary begins. This is so annoying. I can't focus. I must be doing it wrong. Maybe I should just stop. That is the second arrow. Later, a moment of deep peace arrives. The mind immediately grasps it. This is it. I feel so good. But then the peace fades, and a feeling of disappointment follows. That is viparinama, dukkha. And even when nothing in particular is happening, you might feel a subtle agitation, a restlessness, a desire to be doing something else. That is the background hum of sankhara dukkha. On the cushion, you can watch, with detached curiosity, how you fire the second arrows, how you cling to pleasure, and how you resist discomfort. You can see the entire mechanism of suffering in operation. To look squarely at the truth of dukkha is not a morbid or negative act. It is an act of supreme courage and compassion. A good doctor does not ignore an illness out of fear. A good doctor examines the symptoms carefully, makes an accurate diagnosis, and identifies the cause. This is exactly what the Buddha has done. He has shown us the thorn in our heel that causes us to limp through life. He has named our condition. This diagnosis is not the end of the story. It is the necessary first step toward healing. For the Buddha did not just teach about the thorn, he taught with great precision how to remove it. Now that we have seen the nature of our disease and understood its roots in our own habits of mind, we can begin to walk the path of treatment. The first step on this path is not one of struggle or force, but one that requires a quiet strength and a profound shift in orientation. It is the gentle, powerful, and transformative practice of acceptance. Having diagnosed the thorn in our heel, the pervasive condition of dukkha, our immediate, conditioned response is to try and pull it out with force. Our instinct is to fight it, to resist it, to declare war on our own pain and dissatisfaction. We believe that through struggle, we can conquer our own minds and arrive at a place of peace. But this is like trying to flatten a stormy sea with a hammer. The struggle itself only creates more waves, more turmoil, more suffering. The path to healing begins with a completely different movement, a gesture so radical in its gentleness that it can feel alien to our striving minds. It begins with the practice of acceptance. This word, acceptance, is heavy with misunderstanding. In our culture, it can imply passivity, defeat, or resignation. It can sound like giving up, but in the context of this inner work, acceptance is the furthest thing from weakness. It is an act of supreme courage. It is not about liking the situation. It is not about condoning harmful behavior. It is simply about the willingness to see and acknowledge reality as it is, without the filter of our preferences. It is the brave and honest recognition of what is, right here, right now, in this moment. It is the conscious decision to stop arguing with reality. We can understand this through a simple but profound equation. Suffering equals pain multiplied by resistance. Let's break this down. The pain variable represents the first arrow. It is the raw, unavoidable, and often unpleasant data of life. It's the physical ache in your back, the wave of grief from a loss, the sharp sting of criticism, the tremor of anxiety in your stomach. In many cases, we have very little control over this first arrow. Pain happens. The resistance variable, however, is the second arrow. It is our mental and emotional reaction to the pain. It is the story we tell ourselves about the pain. It's the internal no that rises up in defiance of reality. It is the tension, the contraction, the bracing against, the desperate wish that things were different. This resistance, this friction, is what transforms pain into suffering. Now, look at the equation. We may not be able to change the variable of pain, but the variable of resistance is entirely within our control. The practice of acceptance is the practice of methodically, gently, and compassionately reducing our resistance to zero. And what happens in that equation when resistance becomes zero? No matter how high the pain is, it is multiplied by zero. The suffering disappears. The pain may still be present, but the agonizing layer of mental anguish that we add on top of it is gone. This is not a magic trick. It is the simple, liberating mathematics of the mind. So how do we practice this in the laboratory of our meditation? Let us say you are sitting, and an uninvited guest knocks on the door of your mind. The guest's name is fear. Your habitual reaction is to pretend you are not home. You turn up the volume on your distractions, you bolt the door, you brace yourself and hope it goes away. But fear is a persistent guest. The more you ignore it, the louder it pounds. The practice of acceptance is to do something entirely different. It is to walk calmly to the door, open it wide, and say, "Ah, fear, I see you are here. Welcome. Please, come in and have a cup of tea." To serve tea to your fear is to give it your mindful, curious, and non-judgmental attention. You are not buying into its scary stories. You are not letting it run the house. You are simply allowing it to be a guest in the vast space of your awareness. You can investigate it with a gentle, scientific curiosity. Hello, fear. Where are you living in my body right now? Are you that cold knot in my stomach? Are you that tightness in my throat? What is your physical signature? You can ask it, what is your texture? Are you sharp or dull? Are you vibrating or still? Hot or cold? You can notice the thoughts that are traveling with it, seeing them as empty boats, without having to believe they are true. In doing this, you are fundamentally changing your relationship with the emotion. You are no longer its victim. You are its calm, compassionate host. And what often happens when an uninvited guest is met not with resistance, but with this kind of spacious, curious hospitality? It often doesn't stay very long. It delivers its message, feels seen and heard, and then, finding no resistance to push against, its energy dissipates, and it quietly lets itself out the door. There is a powerful Zen story about a master who saw a scorpion drowning in a river. Moved by compassion, he reached down to rescue it. As he lifted it from the water, the scorpion stung his hand. In pain, the master dropped the creature back into the river. But then, seeing it still struggling, he reached down to save it again. And again, it stung him. A disciple, watching from the riverbank, was perplexed. "Master," he shouted, "why do you continue to try and save that ungrateful creature? It is its nature to sting you." The master paused, looking at his swollen hand, and then at the struggling scorpion. He replied, "It is the nature of the scorpion to sting. I accept this. It is my nature to be compassionate. Should I abandon my own nature simply because the scorpion is being true to its?" The master accepted the reality of the scorpion's sting without making it personal. He didn't judge the scorpion as bad. He saw its nature clearly and acted from his own. This is the heart of acceptance. We can learn to accept the stings of our own difficult thoughts, our painful memories, and our turbulent emotions, seeing that it is simply their nature to arise. We don't have to take them so personally. We don't have to judge them. We can meet them with the compassion of our own true nature. This practice extends to our relationship with our own bodies. For many of us, the body is a battlefield. We fight against its aging. We hate its imperfections. We resist its aches and pains. This is a war we are guaranteed to lose, and it is a constant source of dukkha. Acceptance offers a different path. It is the willingness to be with our body exactly as it is today. If there is chronic pain, acceptance doesn't mean giving up on treatment. It means stopping the mental war against the pain. It means, instead of flooding the painful area with thoughts of hatred and resistance, we can try to flood it with a soft, gentle, and kind awareness. We can breathe into it, creating space around it. For the natural process of aging, acceptance means meeting the wrinkles, the gray hairs, and the changing energy levels, not with despair, but with a measure of grace and dignity, acknowledging the natural seasons of a human life. It is a profound paradox that true change can only happen in a climate of acceptance. When we are stuck in a pattern of anxiety, for example, our usual strategy is to hate it and fight it. But this struggle only feeds the anxiety with more tense energy. It is like being caught in quicksand. Your instinct is to flail and fight, but this only makes you sink faster. The only way to save yourself is to first stop struggling, to relax your body, and to accept the reality of your situation. Only then can you make a skillful move. It is the same with our minds. When we finally stop fighting our anxiety and turn to face it with acceptance, we take away its power. We see it clearly for what it is, a collection of thoughts and physical sensations. And from that place of clear, seeing, and non-resistance, a space opens up. It is in this space that true transformation can occur. Acceptance is not the end of the road to change. It is the very ground upon which that road must be built. To practice acceptance is therefore a courageous act of love. It is to love reality enough to stop fighting with it. It is to love yourself enough to stop shooting yourself with the second arrow of resistance. It is the great exhale, the final laying down of arms in the long, exhausting war against what is. It creates a foundation of stability and peace, stopping the endless cycle of creating more suffering for ourselves. But once we have stabilized the ground, can we go further? Once we have stopped pouring poison into the cup of our mind, can we begin to actively pour in nectar? Acceptance stops the negative. Is there a practice that actively cultivates the positive? The answer is yes. It is the practice of intentionally generating warmth, goodwill, and kindness. A journey that begins, once again, with ourselves. It is the path of metta, of loving kindness. The ground of our mind has been cleared. Through the practice of acceptance, we have stopped our long and fruitless war with reality. We have learned to lay down the weapons of resistance, to cease firing the second arrow of self-judgment, and to allow the truth of the present moment to be as it is. The soil is now workable. The thorns and rocks have been removed, but a cleared field, while peaceful, is still empty. The path of wisdom does not end with a neutral peace. It invites us to actively cultivate a garden. It invites us to plant the seeds of the most beautiful and powerful qualities of the human heart. The first and most important of these seeds is called metta. Metta is a word from the ancient Pali language that is often translated as love, but this can be misleading. It is not the possessive, romantic love of songs and poems, nor is it a sentimental or conditional affection. A better translation is loving kindness, unconditional friendliness, or benevolent goodwill. Metta is not a feeling that we must passively wait to receive from the world. It is a skill that can be intentionally cultivated, a muscle of the heart that can be strengthened through practice. It is the sincere and heartfelt wish for the well-being of oneself and all living beings. It is the inner sunshine that allows the seeds of goodness to sprout. And where must this practice begin? Our culture often teaches us that focusing on ourselves is selfish. But in the inner world, the logic is different. The practice of metta must always begin with ourselves. There is an old saying, "You cannot pour from an empty cup." If our own inner vessel is filled with harsh self-criticism, judgment, and feelings of inadequacy, we have nothing genuine to offer to others. Any kindness we try to extend will be tinged with our own unresolved pain. To offer ourselves loving kindness is not a selfish act. It is the necessary prerequisite for authentic compassion for others. It is the act of filling our own cup so that it may naturally overflow to the world. It is looking at our own struggles, our own imperfections, and our own share in the human condition of dukkha, and offering ourselves the same gentle, unconditional friendship that we would offer to a dear friend who was suffering. It is the ultimate antidote to the second arrow, the final and definitive act of putting down the bow of self-recrimination. The practice itself is simple in its form, yet profound in its effect. You begin by taking a comfortable posture, just as in your sitting meditation. You close your eyes and bring your attention to your heart center. To evoke a feeling of warmth, you might recall a time when you felt truly loved and cared for, or perhaps you can picture the face of a beloved pet, or simply imagine the feeling of warm sunshine on your skin. You are looking for a gentle feeling tone of kindness. Then, you begin to silently, slowly, repeat a series of phrases directed at yourself. The traditional phrases are a good place to start, but you can adapt them so they resonate with you personally. You might repeat, "May I be safe. May I be happy. May I be healthy and strong. May I live with ease." As you repeat these phrases, it is not a mechanical recitation. You are trying to connect with the sincere intention behind the words. When you say, "May I be safe," you are genuinely wishing for your own safety from inner and outer harm. When you say, "May I be happy," you are wishing for your own deep and lasting well-being. You are not demanding these things, but offering them as a gentle, heartfelt prayer to your own being. At first, this may feel awkward or even false. The voice of the inner critic might arise and say, "You don't deserve this. That is perfectly normal." Simply notice that voice as another empty boat, another cloud, and gently return to the phrases. The feeling is not as important as the intention. You are planting the seeds. The warmth will come in time. Once you have spent time establishing a foundation of kindness for yourself, you can begin to expand the circle of metta outwards. First, bring to mind a benefactor or a dearly loved one. Picture a good friend, a family member, a mentor, or anyone who has shown you kindness. See them clearly in your mind's eye, and now direct the phrases towards them. May you be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy and strong. May you live with ease. Feel the natural warmth and goodwill that flows from your heart towards this person. Notice how easy it can be to wish them well. The next stage is to bring to mind a neutral person. This might be the cashier at your local store, a person you see on your daily commute, a neighbor you don't know well. You have no strong feelings about them, either positive or negative. Now, picture this person and offer them the very same wishes. May you too be safe. May you be happy. May you be healthy. May you live with ease. This is a powerful step. It begins to break down the walls of indifference that separate us from the vast majority of humanity. It is the practice of recognizing the full and complex inner life of a stranger and seeing that they, just like you, wish to be happy and free from suffering. The most challenging and perhaps most transformative stage is to bring to mind a difficult person, someone with whom you have conflict, who has hurt you, or who provokes feelings of anger and resentment in you. The practice here is not to condone their harmful actions or to force yourself to like them. It is a practice for your own liberation. It is the recognition that holding on to anger and resentment is like drinking poison and expecting the other person to die. So, to the best of your ability, you bring this person to mind and you offer them the phrases, "May you be free from suffering." This can be a profound insight. Often, people cause harm precisely because they are suffering deeply themselves. In wishing them well, you are wishing for the end of the very causes and conditions that make them act in harmful ways. This practice is the act of freeing yourself from the prison of your own hatred. Finally, you expand the circle to its widest possible dimension. You radiate this feeling of loving kindness outwards in all directions to all beings in your city, your country, your world, to all animals, to all creatures, seen and unseen, to friends, to enemies, and to strangers. May all beings everywhere be safe. May all beings be happy. May all beings be free from suffering. You connect your own small heart to the great universal heart of compassion. Lest we think of metta as a soft or passive quality, we should remember the story of the Buddha and the maddened elephant. The Buddha's jealous cousin, Devadatta, in a plot to assassinate him, arranged for the royal elephant to be intoxicated and enraged, and then unleashed it upon the narrow lane where the Buddha was walking. As the enormous beast charged, screaming and destroying everything in its path, people fled in terror. The Buddha's loyal attendant, Ananda, tried to shield him with his own body, but the Buddha told him to step aside. He stood his ground, calm and motionless. He did not prepare to fight. He did not run. He simply faced the charging elephant and radiated an immense, powerful, and unwavering field of pure metta. The story says that as the enraged animal entered this powerful field of loving kindness, its fury began to dissolve. Its pace slowed. Its eyes softened. It came to a halt before the Buddha and knelt down, allowing the Buddha to gently stroke its forehead. The lesson is clear. Loving kindness is not a weakness. It is a shield. It is a force more powerful than anger, a warmth that can melt the ice of hatred, both in others and, more importantly, within ourselves. This practice is a direct antidote to the prison of the ego. The sense of a separate self, which we saw is an illusion, thrives on comparison, judgment, and division. It constantly sorts the world into me versus them. Metta systematically undermines this process. It is a practice of radical inclusion. When you genuinely wish for another's well-being, the sense of separation softens. When you can offer even a flicker of goodwill to a difficult person, the hard, rigid walls of your own anger begin to crumble. It is the lived experience of the interconnectedness we discovered in the teaching of Anatta. It is the active choice to meet the world with an open heart. As we consistently practice opening the heart in this way, another beautiful quality begins to emerge naturally and effortlessly. When our vision is no longer clouded by constant judgment and resentment, we begin to see the world differently. We start to notice the goodness that is already present, the countless small gifts that we previously overlooked. Our focus begins to shift from a mentality of lack to one of abundance. This natural orientation towards what is good, this heartfelt recognition of the blessings of the present moment, is the essence of gratitude. As the heart softens through the practice of loving kindness, a new way of seeing begins to dawn. When we cease our relentless judgment of ourselves and others, it is as if the dust settles in a room, allowing the sunlight to stream in and illuminate what was there all along. We begin to notice the countless gifts that are woven into the fabric of our ordinary existence. This shift in perception, this intentional turning of the mind from what is lacking to what is present, is the practice of gratitude. Like metta, gratitude is not a passive emotion we must wait to feel. It is an active skill, a conscious orientation of the mind that can be cultivated and which holds the power to radically transform our experience of life. The default setting of the human mind, conditioned by millions of years of evolution, is to be a relentless problem solver. It constantly scans the horizon for threats, dangers, and deficiencies. This was useful for our survival on the savannah, but in our modern world, it has become the engine of a chronic, low-grade dissatisfaction. We are caught on what psychologists call the hedonic treadmill. We believe happiness lies in the next achievement, the next purchase, the next relationship. We run and run, and when we finally get what we wanted, we feel a brief thrill, but our baseline of happiness quickly resets, and our eyes are already scanning for the next goal. This inner tendency is amplified 1,000-fold by a culture of comparison. We are bombarded with curated images of other people's highlight reels, making our own ordinary, behind-the-scenes life feel inadequate. Comparison, it has been said, is the thief of joy. Gratitude is the direct and powerful antidote to this entire mechanism. It is a conscious act of stepping off the treadmill and refusing to play the game of comparison. It does this by deliberately focusing our attention not on what we want, but on what we have. Not on what is missing, but on what is present. The practice is disarmingly simple. It can be woven into your day or made a part of your formal meditation. It is the practice of consciously bringing to mind, with specificity, the things for which you are thankful. It is not enough to have a vague feeling of being blessed. The power is in the particulars. At the end of each day, you might take a moment to recall 3 specific good things. And the magic is often found in the smallest, most overlooked details. Instead of a general, "I'm grateful for my health," you might reflect on, "I am grateful for the feeling of my lungs filling with air, without effort." Instead of, "I'm grateful for my home," it could be, "I am grateful for the comforting weight of this blanket on my body." You can feel gratitude for the simple taste of a cup of tea, the warmth of the sun on your face, the sound of a loved one's voice, the existence of music, the function of your eyes that allows you to see color and form. We have become numb to the sheer, breathtaking miracle of ordinary life. We live as if breathing, seeing, and walking are mundane, when they are, in fact, extraordinary gifts. Gratitude is the practice of resensitizing ourselves to this wonder. It is the practice of waking up from the trance of taking life for granted. There is a powerful Sufi story that illustrates our condition perfectly. It tells of a beggar who sat by the side of a road for more than 30 years. Every day, he sat upon an old wooden box and begged for spare change, lamenting his miserable poverty. One day, a stranger passed by. The stranger asked, "What are you sitting on?" The beggar replied casually, "Oh, just an old box. I've been sitting on it for as long as I can remember." The stranger persisted. "Have you ever looked inside?" The beggar scoffed. "Look inside? Why? There's nothing in it. I urge you to look," the stranger said, before walking on. Puzzled and annoyed, but with his curiosity piqued, the beggar decided to humor the stranger. With great effort, he managed to pry open the lid of the heavy box he had used as a simple seat for 3 decades. He looked inside, and his breath caught in his throat. The box was filled to the very brim with shimmering gold coins. He had been sitting on a priceless treasure his entire life, while living the reality of a destitute pauper. We are all this beggar. We sit upon the incalculable treasure of the present moment, the treasure of our senses, of our consciousness, of the simple beauty of the world that is always available to us. Yet our minds are out on the street, begging for scraps of happiness from some imagined future, or dwelling on the perceived poverty of our past. Gratitude is the transformative act of finally looking inside the box. It is the realization that we are already wealthy beyond measure. This practice can extend even to the most difficult areas of our lives. This may sound strange, but one of the most profound levels of practice is to cultivate gratitude for our hardships. This is not a form of self-punishment, but an act of profound alchemy. It is the recognition that our greatest lessons and our deepest growth often emerge from our most significant challenges. We can learn to be grateful for a failure because it taught us humility and perhaps pointed our life in a more authentic direction. We can learn to feel a sense of gratitude for our enemies or those who cause us difficulty because they are our most powerful teachers. They show us, with perfect clarity, where our practice is still weak, where we are still hooked by anger, where our ego is still tender. They reveal the work we still have to do. By cultivating gratitude for our challenges, we transform the narrative of our life from a story of victimhood into a curriculum for wisdom. Ultimately, gratitude is another name for radical presence. It is impossible to be truly grateful for something in the past or the future. Gratitude is an experience that happens only in the now. When you are fully absorbed in appreciating the intricate beauty of a single leaf, Your mind is not worrying about tomorrow's meeting. When you are feeling a sincere wave of thankfulness for a moment of human connection, you are not replaying old regrets. Gratitude anchors us in the richness of what is, and in doing so, it liberates us from the tyranny of what is not. It is the ultimate cure for the pervasive "I'll be happy when" syndrome that plagues our modern minds. It reveals the truth that happiness is not a destination we must strive to reach, but a way of seeing that is available in every moment. Gratitude is the lens that brings this vision into focus. The practice of gratitude, then, is a fundamental rewiring of our consciousness. It is a daily, moment-to-moment choice to water the flowers in the garden of our mind rather than the weeds. It is the discipline of counting our blessings rather than our burdens. It is the discovery of the beggar's treasure. With this tool, alongside the clarity of mindfulness, the spaciousness of acceptance, and the warmth of loving kindness, we have assembled a powerful inner toolkit. We have learned how to work with our own minds and hearts on the quiet ground of the meditation cushion. The next great challenge, and the true test of our practice, is to take these tools out into the world. How does this inner transformation change our relationship with the demands, the pressures, and the complexities of our daily life, particularly in the realm of work, ambition, and the pursuit of success? Now that we have gathered the essential tools for our inner life, the mindfulness of the breath, the spaciousness of acceptance, the warmth of loving kindness, and the appreciative lens of gratitude, we must carry them off the meditation cushion and into the world. For most of us, the most demanding, stressful, and challenging part of that world is the place where we work. The modern workplace can feel like a battlefield for our attention, a constant source of pressure and anxiety, a place where the monkey mind reigns supreme. The conventional wisdom tells us we must escape from our work to find peace, to create a work-life balance where we cordon off our spiritual life from the harsh realities of our job. But this is a false dichotomy. The path of wisdom does not ask us to run from our life. It asks us to walk directly into it. The workplace need not be an obstacle to our practice. It can, in fact, become our most profound and effective training ground. We are taught to strive for work-life balance, an idea that conjures the image of a scale with our job on one side and our real life on the other. This very image sets up a conflict, an inherent opposition between the two. It suggests that work is the price we pay for life, the bitter medicine we must swallow to earn the sweet reward of our free time. This framework naturally creates resentment and division. A more integrated and skillful approach is to dissolve this imaginary boundary. Instead of work-life balance, we can aspire to work-life integration. This does not mean working all the time. It means bringing the same quality of presence, compassion, and awareness to all of our time. It is the practice of infusing our activities at work with the same mindful attention we cultivate in the silence of our sitting practice, thereby transforming our entire day into a seamless whole. One of the most powerful and practical ways to do this is to rebel against the great modern myth of multitasking. Look at the reality of the contemporary office. A dozen open tabs on a browser, the constant ping of new emails and messages, a phone buzzing on the desk while we attempt to hold a conversation. We believe we are being efficient, but the truth is, we are just fracturing our attention into useless slivers. The human brain is not designed to focus on multiple complex tasks simultaneously. What it actually does is switch rapidly and inefficiently from one task to another and back again. Each switch costs mental energy, increases the likelihood of errors, and floods our nervous system with the stress hormone cortisol. Multitasking is the corporate embodiment of the monkey mind. The antidote is the simple, radical act of single tasking. It is a profound mindfulness practice for the workplace. When you decide to write an email, just write the email, close the other tabs. Let the phone go to voicemail. Give your full, undivided attention to the task of communication for those 5 minutes. When you are in a meeting, just be in the meeting. Put your laptop away. Listen with your whole being to the person who is speaking, not just to form your own reply, but to truly understand them. When you take a break to drink a cup of coffee, just drink the coffee. Don't scroll through your phone. Feel the warmth of the cup. Smell the aroma. Taste the flavor. By bringing this focused, unitasking awareness to each activity, you not only dramatically reduce your stress levels, but you will find that the quality, creativity, and efficiency of your work increases exponentially. It is both a spiritual discipline and a secret to professional excellence. There is a timeless story of a traveler who came upon a vast construction site where a great cathedral was being built. He saw 2 men side by side, engaged in the exact same task, hewing large blocks of stone with a hammer and chisel. The first man was a picture of misery. His face was grim, his movements were resentful, and he sighed heavily with every blow of the hammer. The traveler approached him and asked, "Good sir, what is it that you are doing?" The man glared at him, wiped the sweat from his brow, and grumbled, "What does it look like? I'm hacking away at this cursed stone. It's back-breaking, thankless work. And for what? A few coins to feed my family. It's a miserable existence." The traveler then moved to the second man. This man was also working hard, his body glistening with sweat, but his expression was one of intense focus and quiet dignity. There was a light in his eyes. The traveler asked him the same question. "What are you doing?" The man paused his work, looked up at the soaring arches and half-finished spires of the structure rising behind them, and a genuine smile touched his lips. He said with quiet pride, "I am building a great cathedral." The task was identical. The physical labor was the same, but their inner experience of the work was worlds apart. The first man was just cutting stone. His work was a burden. The second man was building a cathedral. His work was a calling. We all have this choice every day. We can see our work as a series of meaningless tasks, or we can connect it to a larger purpose, a cathedral of our own understanding. But what if your job doesn't feel like building a cathedral? What if it involves repetitive, seemingly boring tasks? This is where we can practice what Zen calls shoshin, or beginner's mind. A beginner's mind is open, curious, and free from the dullness of expectation. An expert's mind is often closed, believing it already knows everything. To practice with a beginner's mind is to approach even the most mundane task as if you are doing it for the very first time. If your job is data entry, can you notice the feeling of your fingers on the keyboard? Can you see the shapes of the letters and numbers as they appear on the screen? If you are cleaning a room, can you feel the texture of the cloth in your hand? Notice the way the light reflects off the clean surface, and engage with the task with your full sensory awareness. Boredom is not a property of the task itself. It is the property of a mind that has checked out, a mind that is somewhere else. By bringing a fresh, curious attention to the present moment reality of the task, we can dissolve the spell of boredom. This all points to a fundamental reframing of the purpose of work. Our society teaches us that the purpose of work is purely external, to acquire money, status, and security. These things have their place, but a wisdom tradition suggests an additional, internal purpose. From this perspective, the workplace is a gymnasium for our spiritual growth. That difficult colleague is not just an irritation, they are a precious opportunity to practice patience. That impossibly demanding client is a chance to practice deep listening and compassion. A project that fails is a lesson in humility and impermanence. A tight deadline is a chance to practice calm and focus under pressure. Every act of our job, when seen through this lens, can become an act of service, a way of contributing to the larger web of society. When we add this internal dimension of purpose to our work, it becomes infused with a meaning that no paycheck, title, or external validation can ever provide. Our career ceases to be separate from our spiritual path. It becomes the very ground upon which we walk it. We are no longer just cutting stone. We are building our cathedral, one mindful moment at a time. And as we build, we must look at the currency this work provides and our relationship to the material world it allows us to access. Our work in the world, our striving and our ambition is intimately connected to a deep and powerful current in our culture, the pursuit of material things. We are born into a civilization that whispers a single, seductive promise from 1,000 different directions. Happiness can be bought. The right car, the latest phone, the fashionable clothes, the bigger house, these are presented not just as objects, but as keys that will unlock the door to contentment, to peace, to a better version of ourselves. We work hard to earn the money, to buy the things to make us happy. This is the logic we have been taught, but the wisdom of the path shows us that this logic is fundamentally flawed. It is a chase that has no end, and true freedom is found not in getting more, but in wanting less. To understand this, we must first look at the mechanism of desire itself. When we crave a new object, we are not actually craving the object. We are craving the feeling that we project onto it. We don't want the expensive watch. We want the feeling of success or admiration we believe it will bring. We don't want the sprawling house. We want the feeling of security or family harmony we imagine will happen within its walls. We are chasing a feeling, an internal state. The problem, as we have learned from the truth of anicca, is that all feelings are impermanent. The thrill of a new purchase is a fleeting cloud. The new car smell fades. A better model is released a year later. The beautiful dress gets pushed to the back of the closet. The desire engine, having been briefly satisfied, soon starts up again, hungry for the next fix. We are looking for lasting satisfaction in things that are fundamentally unable to provide it. This is a blueprint for dukkha, for a life of perpetual, low-grade dissatisfaction, always looking outside of ourselves for the peace that can only be found within. There is a story of a wealthy merchant, a man whose life was defined by his opulent possessions, who went to visit a renowned Zen master. He was ushered into the master's room and was shocked by its stark simplicity. There was nothing but a mat on the floor for sleeping, a cup, a bowl, and a single book. The merchant, accustomed to rooms filled with fine silks, carved furniture, and works of art, could not hide his astonishment. "Master," he said, trying to conceal his pity, "I have heard of your great wisdom, but looking at your quarters, where is all your furniture?" The Zen master smiled gently, his eyes twinkling. He looked at the merchant and asked, "My dear friend, may I ask where your furniture is?" The merchant laughed, thinking the master was making a joke. "My furniture? I don't carry my furniture with me. I am just a visitor, a traveler passing through." The Zen master's smile broadened. "So am I," he said. "This simple story contains a universe of wisdom. We are all just travelers passing through this life. Our possessions are not us, and they are not truly ours. They are temporary loans from the universe. We can use them, we can enjoy them, but we never truly own them. When we die, we leave it all behind." Seeing this with clarity begins to loosen the tight grip of attachment. Our desperate need to accumulate, to possess, to hoard, begins to seem slightly absurd. We realize that we can travel through this life much more lightly, with much more freedom, if we are not burdened by a mountain of baggage. This realization can be brought into our daily life through the practice of mindful consumption. This is the art of bringing awareness and intention to the act of buying and acquiring. Before making a purchase, especially an impulsive one, we can create a sacred pause. We can step back from the magnetic pull of desire and ask ourselves a few honest questions. What is the real motivation here? Am I trying to soothe an uncomfortable feeling like boredom, loneliness, or a sense of inadequacy? Is this object a genuine need, or is it just a fleeting want? What is the true cost of this item? Not just the price tag, but the cost in life energy it took to earn that money, and the future cost in the time and attention I will have to spend cleaning it, maintaining it, insuring it, and worrying about it. Will this truly add lasting value and well-being to my life? Or is it just another quick hit for the hungry ghost of desire? This practice is not about punishing ourselves or living a life of grim austerity. It is about empowerment. It is about moving from being an unconscious consumer, driven by habit and advertising, to being a conscious creator of a simpler, more intentional life. This leads naturally to the joy of simplicity. In our culture of more, the idea of less can seem like deprivation. But from a spiritual perspective, simplicity is a form of wealth. Every object we own also owns a piece of us. It occupies not just physical space in our home, but mental space in our mind. The more we have, the more we have to worry about. A cluttered home often reflects a cluttered mind. To simplify our outer world is to create a spacious, calm, and uncluttered inner world. The ultimate symbol of this principle is the Buddhist monk's begging bowl. It is a simple, functional vessel, often made of clay or iron. It represents one of the most profound teachings. The bowl is large enough to hold only what is necessary for a single day. The monk trusts that tomorrow the bowl will be filled again. It is a physical embodiment of non-attachment, of living without hoarding, of a radical trust in the flow of life. The empty bowl is a symbol that our true security lies not in what we can accumulate and possess, but in our capacity to receive with gratitude and to let go with grace. It teaches us that happiness is not determined by how full our house is, but by how empty our mind is of clinging and fear. The freedom from materialism, then, is not about hating money or possessions. It is about changing our relationship to them. It is about using them as tools for our well-being, rather than being used by them in a fruitless search for happiness. It is the realization that no external object can ever fill the inner void. That void is not a lack of things, it is a lack of presence. It can only be filled by turning our attention inward, by discovering the beggar's treasure that we are already sitting on. It is the discovery that the richest person in the world is not the one who has the most, but the one who needs the least. As we begin to simplify our outer life in this way, we naturally create more space for our inner life. We commit more deeply to the practice of just sitting, of being with ourselves in the quiet. And in this deepening silence, as we strip away the external distractions of consumerism and the internal distractions of endless wanting, we come face to face with a new and formidable challenge. We have explored how to work with pain, with difficult emotions, with our thoughts. But what happens when there is an absence of all of these things? What do we do when we are met not with a storm, but with a vast, empty, and seemingly endless desert? This is the great and misunderstood obstacle that our stimulation-addicted minds fear above all else. It is the journey into the desert of boredom. As we simplify our outer world and deepen our commitment to the inner, we will inevitably encounter one of the most feared and misunderstood states of the modern mind. We have learned to face our pain, to observe our thoughts, to accept our reality. But what happens when the reality of the moment is that nothing seems to be happening at all? What arises when the drama subsides, the thoughts quiet down, and we are left in a vast, empty, and featureless landscape? This is the territory of boredom. And in our hyper-stimulated world, we have come to see it as an enemy, a void to be filled at all costs. The instant we feel its approach, we reflexively reach for our phones, for a distraction, for any form of input to save us from the perceived emptiness. On the meditation cushion, however, there is nowhere to run. The journey of practice, sooner or later, leads every traveler through what can feel like the great desert of boredom. Our instinct is to see this as a failure, a sign that the meditation isn't working. But the path of wisdom teaches us the opposite. To encounter boredom and to have the courage to stay with it is a sign of profound progress. To understand why boredom feels so uncomfortable, we must recognize how our brains have been conditioned. We live in an attention economy that has trained us to be addicts. We are addicted to novelty, to information, to the next little hit of dopamine that comes from a notification, a new email, a funny video. Our nervous systems have been calibrated to a pathologically high level of stimulation. When we sit down to meditate, we are deliberately cutting off the supply of our drug of choice, distraction. The brain, accustomed to its constant fix, goes into a state of withdrawal. It panics. It sends up desperate signals. This is useless. This is a waste of time. Give me something interesting to think about. Anything is better than this. This feeling that we call boredom is not a reflection of reality. Reality is never boring. It is the withdrawal symptom of an overstimulated mind. Seeing it this way helps us to depersonalize it. It is not your fault. You are not a boring person. You are simply a courageous human being undertaking the difficult but necessary work of detoxing your own consciousness. So what is the practice when this great wave of boredom descends? We apply the same fundamental tools we have learned. We do not fight it. We do not flee from it. We do not judge it. We turn toward it with gentle, mindful curiosity. We treat boredom itself as the object of our meditation. First, we can simply and kindly label it in our mind. Boredom is present. No judgment, just a quiet acknowledgement. Then, we can investigate its physical reality. Where does boredom live in your body? Is it a heavy, leaden feeling in your arms and legs? Is it a restless, antsy, fidgety energy that makes you want to jump out of your skin? Is it a foggy, dull sensation behind your eyes? By moving our attention from the abstract concept of boredom to the direct, tangible sensations in the body, we make it workable. We see that it is not a monolithic, solid thing, but a collection of changing physical energies. We can also observe the thoughts that travel with it. The mind will likely be serving up a rich buffet of escape fantasies, planning future vacations, reimagining past conversations, composing mental to-do lists. We can simply watch this parade of thoughts, labeling it all, thinking, without needing to climb aboard any of the floats. The practice is simply to stay with the raw, uncomfortable energy of boredom without acting on the powerful impulse to escape. There is a story of a great artist who was working on his masterpiece, a painting of a powerful waterfall. He labored for weeks, trying to capture the perfect spray of the water, the exact way the light hit the mist. But the more he tried, the more he controlled every brushstroke, the more lifeless and stale his painting became. It lacked energy, it lacked a soul. Utterly exhausted, frustrated, and deeply bored with his own failed efforts, he finally gave up. In a moment of pure, nihilistic surrender, he took his brush, dripping with white paint, and in a fit of pique, he flung it at the canvas, fully intending to ruin the painting and be done with it. The brush hit the canvas, leaving a chaotic, accidental, and beautiful splash of white right in the heart of the waterfall. The artist stepped back, and his jaw dropped. That single, unplanned mark, born not of careful effort, but of complete surrender to his own frustration and boredom, was the most alive part of the painting. It was the very essence of the mist, the wild energy of the waterfall that he had been unable to capture through conscious effort. It was the stroke that completed the masterpiece. This story teaches us that our constant, effortful doing can sometimes be the very thing that stands in our way. The state of boredom, of feeling stuck, of giving up, can be a tremendously fertile ground. It is a sign that our ego, with its plans and its striving, is running out of steam. It is in this space, when our conceptual mind finally gets tired of its own activity, that something new, something unexpected, something authentic has a chance to break through. Boredom is not an obstacle on the path. It is a gateway. It is a sign that you are succeeding in breaking your addiction to external sources of entertainment. You are learning that you do not need the world to constantly entertain you. This is a profound step toward inner freedom and resilience. And if you have the courage to sit through the discomfort, to simply endure the screaming of the detoxing mind, you discover what lies on the other side of the desert of boredom. The restless energy eventually burns itself out. The frantic craving for stimulation subsides. And in the space that is left, a new quality of perception emerges. It is a deep, resonant quiet. It is a simple, luminous presence. The mind, no longer demanding to be entertained, becomes incredibly sensitive. You begin to notice the subtle play of light in the room, the intricate symphony of distant sounds, the delicate, ever-present rhythm of your own breathing. You discover that the desert was never truly empty. It was teeming with a subtle, vibrant life that was simply drowned out by the noise of your own seeking mind. This is the oasis of pure awareness that can only be found by first having the courage to cross the desert. Therefore, we must reframe our entire understanding of this common experience. Boredom is not a problem to be solved. It is not a sign that you are doing it wrong. It is a rite of passage for every serious practitioner of the inner life. It is the guardian at the threshold of a deeper silence. By learning to sit still and be with the discomfort, by allowing the waves of restlessness to wash over you without being swept away, you are cultivating a profound inner strength. You are discovering a quiet, unshakable joy that is not dependent on any external condition. You are finding the hidden spring within the heart of the desert. As you sit in this deepening stillness, however, other energies may also be unearthed. While boredom is a cool, restless state, the silence can also allow hotter, more volatile forces to surface. A long-buried memory, a simmering resentment, a sense of injustice, these can arise with a fiery intensity. The guest at the door is no longer the dullness of boredom, but the hot coal of anger. As we sit in the quiet landscape of the mind, a space we have cleared through acceptance and simplicity, we may find that not all visitors are as cool and listless as boredom. Sometimes, the stillness can act like a magnifying glass for the sun's rays, concentrating a dormant energy until it bursts into flame. A memory of a past injustice, a fresh frustration from our day, a sense of being wronged, these can erupt with a sudden and startling intensity. This is the arrival of anger. It is a hot, sharp, and powerful energy. It floods the body with adrenaline, narrows our focus, and screams for action. In many spiritual traditions, anger is seen as a poison, a defilement to be eradicated, but a wiser path suggests something different. Anger is not inherently evil. It is a natural human emotion, a vital part of our survival instinct. The problem is not the anger itself, it is our profoundly unskillful relationship with it. Our typical response to anger falls into one of two disastrous traps. The first is suppression. We are taught that anger is negative or unspiritual, so we deny it. We push it down into the dark basement of our consciousness, pretending it isn't there. But suppressed anger doesn't disappear, it metastasizes. It turns into resentment, cynicism, depression, or physical illness. It leaks out in the form of passive aggression and sarcastic remarks. The second trap is the opposite, explosion. We identify completely with the energy of anger and become its mindless puppet. We lash out with harsh words or violent actions, causing immense harm to others and to ourselves, creating a wake of regret that follows us for years. Both of these paths, suppression and explosion, are forms of suffering. The path of wisdom offers a third way, a middle path. It is the path of transformation. The Buddha offered a powerful metaphor for the experience of anger. He said, Holding on to anger is like grasping a hot coal with the intent of throwing it at someone else. You are the one who gets burned. Reflect on this image. The person who has wronged you may be miles away, living their life, completely oblivious to your inner state. But you are the one sitting in your own home, replaying the hurtful scene over and over in your mind. You are the one whose stomach is churning with acid, whose blood pressure is rising, whose mind is clouded with vengeful thoughts. You are the one holding the burning coal, searing your own hand, poisoning your own peace, believing that this self-inflicted pain will somehow punish the other person. The first and most crucial step in working with anger is the compassionate decision to put down the hot coal. This is not an act of forgiveness for the other person's sake. It is an act of profound kindness and sanity for your own. So how do we do this when the fire is raging? The practice begins not by trying to reason with the angry thoughts. This is like trying to reason with a forest fire. The first step is to drop the story and go directly to the body and the breath. The moment you recognize, anger is here, you immediately bring your attention to the anchor of the breath. Feel the air coming in, feel the air going out. This simple act creates a vital pause, a space between the stimulus of anger and your habitual reaction. Then, from the stability of the breath, you turn your awareness to the raw physical sensations of the anger itself. Where does it live in your body? Is it a fire in your chest? A searing heat rising to your face? A clamping down in your jaw? Fists that want to clench? Instead of being lost in the story of why you are angry, you become a curious scientist, observing the pure energy of the emotion. You are not judging it or trying to make it go away. You are simply feeling it, holding it in a spacious, mindful awareness. You are learning to tend the fire without getting consumed by it. The great Zen master Thich Nhat Hanh offers a beautiful and deeply compassionate way to understand this process. He teaches us to look at our anger not as a monster, but as a suffering baby. When a baby is crying, a skillful parent does not ignore it, nor do they strike it to make it stop. A skillful parent practices a kind of mindfulness. First, you stop what you are doing, go to the baby, and gently pick it up. This is the act of recognizing your anger and turning your attention toward it. You can say to yourself, breathing in, I know that anger is in me. Breathing out, I will take good care of my anger. Second, you embrace the baby. You hold it tenderly. You soothe it with your warmth and your calm presence. This is the practice of self-compassion, of holding the raw energy of your anger with kindness rather than condemnation. You are not trying to get rid of it. You are caring for it. The third step is to look deeply to understand why the baby is crying. After you have calmed it, you investigate. Is the baby hungry? Is it in pain? Is its diaper wet? You listen for its needs. In the same way, once the initial, blazing heat of your anger has been soothed by the balm of your mindful attention, you can begin to look deeply into its roots. Anger is almost always a secondary emotion. It is a protective shield, a loud guard dog that is barking to protect a more tender, vulnerable feeling underneath. You can ask yourself, what is this anger protecting? What lies beneath it? Often, you will find hurt. Your anger is a response to feeling wounded or dismissed. Sometimes, you will find fear. You are angry because you feel threatened, or because you are afraid of losing control of a situation. And sometimes, you will find a deep sense of injustice. You are angry because you are witnessing a genuine wrong being done to yourself or to others. This kind of anger is often called righteous anger, and it is not a poison. It is a sign that your moral compass is working correctly. By understanding the root of our anger, we can begin to transform it. Anger is pure, powerful energy. Like fire, this energy is not good or bad. Its effect depends entirely on how it is channeled. It can be used to destroy a village, or it can be harnessed to forge steel, to cook a meal, to provide warmth in the winter. If you discover your anger is rooted in hurt, You can use its energy not to lash out, but to practice self-compassion, to soothe your own wounds, and to communicate your boundaries in a clear and non-violent way. If your anger is rooted in fear, you can use its energy to cultivate courage, to prepare skillfully for a challenge, or to protect yourself and others from harm. And if your anger is rooted in a clear seeing of injustice, it can become the most powerful fuel for compassionate action. It is the energy that has powered every great movement for social change in history. It is the energy that says, "This is not right, and I will act to change it." The key is to first allow the blind, reactive heat of the anger to cool through mindfulness, and then to channel the remaining, potent energy with wisdom. In this way, our relationship with anger is completely transformed. It ceases to be an enemy to be vanquished, or a demon to be suppressed. It becomes a wise, if sometimes difficult, messenger. It becomes a source of incredible energy that we can learn to harness for our own liberation and for the benefit of the world. We learn to stop burning ourselves with the hot coal of our own rage, and instead, we use its warmth to illuminate our path. So many of these powerful emotions, anger, hurt, fear, and joy arise in the context of our relationships with others. Our unskillful handling of our inner world inevitably leads to unskillful communication in our outer world, creating the misunderstandings and conflicts that cause so much pain. Now that we have learned to hold these inner energies with greater wisdom, we must ask, how does this transform the way we interact with each other? How does it change the very words we speak and the way we listen? Our inner practice on the cushion is a form of training, a preparation for the great, unscripted improvisation of our life with others. It is in our relationships with our partners, our children, our colleagues, and even with strangers that the fruits of our practice are truly tested. We can be a paragon of tranquility when sitting alone in a quiet room, but the real measure of our wisdom is how we respond in the midst of a difficult conversation. Communication is the primary vehicle through which we create either connection or separation, harmony or conflict, happiness or suffering. Our words can be bridges that unite hearts, or they can be walls that create prisons of misunderstanding. The path of mindful communication, like a bird in flight, has two essential wings: the receptive wing of deep listening and the expressive wing of loving speech. Let us begin with the receptive wing, for it is the foundation. The art of deep listening is one of the most precious and rare gifts we can offer another human being. Most of the time, when we believe we are listening, we are actually doing something else entirely. We are waiting, often impatiently, for our turn to speak. As the other person talks, our mind is furiously at work, formulating a rebuttal, preparing an anecdote, crafting a piece of advice, or searching for a similar story from our own life to share. We are hearing the words, but we are not truly listening to the person. Deep listening is the practice of setting aside our own inner monologue and offering our full, undivided, and compassionate presence to another. The single intention is to understand their perspective, to feel their joy, to touch their suffering without needing to fix, judge, or change it. It is an active process of receiving, of creating a safe and spacious container for another person's truth to unfold. It means listening with our ears, but also with our eyes and our heart, attending not just to the words being said, but to the emotions shimmering beneath them, the story told by their posture, the hesitations that speak volumes. There is a powerful story from the life of the Buddha that perfectly illustrates the strength found in this kind of receptive silence. A man who was known for his sharp intellect and arrogant demeanor became deeply offended by the Buddha's growing fame. He decided to seek him out with the sole intention of verbally abusing and humiliating him in public. He found the Buddha, and for a long time, he unleashed a torrent of the most vicious insults he could conjure. He called him a fake, a charlatan, and a fool. He attacked his teachings and his character with venom. Throughout this entire ordeal, the Buddha did not interrupt. He did not defend himself. He simply stood, fully present, and listened with a calm and unwavering attention. He received all the man's rage without absorbing it, like the vast earth receiving a shower of rain. When the man finally sputtered to a halt, exhausted and breathless from his own tirade, a deep silence fell between them. The Buddha then asked him a simple, gentle question. "My friend," he said, "if you prepare an exquisite gift for someone and you present it to them, but they politely decline to accept your gift, to whom does that gift then belong?" The man, taken aback by the unexpected question, thought for a moment and replied, "Well, if they don't accept it, then it would still belong to me." The Buddha nodded his head slowly. "Exactly so," he said softly. "Today, you have brought me a gift of many insults and a great deal of anger. I decline to accept your gift." The man stood in stunned silence, his own anger now useless. His poison returned to him. This is the power of deep listening and non-reaction. By not accepting the gift of another's anger, we remain free, and we give them the space to see their own state of mind more clearly. The other wing of mindful communication is loving speech, or what is known in the Buddhist tradition as right speech. This is the art of using our words to reduce suffering and create happiness. Before we speak, we can train ourselves to pass our intended words through 4 gentle but powerful gates. The first gate asks, "Is it true?" This is a commitment to honesty, to abandoning lies, exaggeration, and deception. The second gate asks, "Is it kind?" An utterance might be true, but if its intention is to wound, to belittle, or to cause pain, it is unskillful. We learn to refrain from harsh, abusive, or malicious language. The third gate is perhaps the most difficult for our talkative culture. Is it beneficial or necessary? Something might be both true and kind, but is it actually useful to say it? Will it lead to greater understanding and harmony? Or is it just idle chatter, gossip, or a complaint that serves no real purpose? So much of our daily speech falls into this category of being unnecessary, simply filling the silence with noise. The fourth and final gate asks, "Is this the right time and place?" The most skillful words spoken at the wrong time can fall on deaf ears or even cause harm. Is the other person in a receptive state to hear what we have to say? Is this a conversation best had in private rather than in public? We will not always succeed in passing our words through all 4 gates, but by simply holding this intention, by creating a small pause before we speak, we can prevent an immense amount of misunderstanding and hurt. This brings us to the most practical tool of all, the sacred pause. The pause is the moment of stillness between the stimulus, what someone else says or does, and our response. It is a single conscious breath. In that breath, we have the opportunity to check the 4 gates. In that breath, we can notice the hot coal of our own anger and decide not to throw it. In that breath, we can choose connection over being right. A single conscious breath before speaking can be the difference between a conversation that builds a wall and one that builds a bridge. We must remember that our words are not just empty sounds. They are creative forces. Words have the power to create realities. A few careless, critical words spoken to a child can shape their self-esteem for a lifetime. A single, sincere compliment can give someone the courage to pursue a dream. With our speech, we are constantly sowing seeds in the gardens of our own minds and the minds of others. Are we sowing seeds of peace, clarity, and compassion? Or are we sowing seeds of conflict, confusion, and resentment? The practice of mindful communication is the practice of becoming a conscious, intentional gardener of our relational world. It is the understanding that every conversation is an opportunity to heal, to connect, and to alleviate suffering. It is the external, audible manifestation of a mind that is being trained in peace. As we endeavor to apply these profound practices to our sitting meditation, to our emotional life, to our communication, we will inevitably encounter periods of difficulty. The initial excitement of the path can wane. The practice can begin to feel dry, mechanical, or even pointless. We might look at our progress and feel we have gotten nowhere. In these moments, the temptation to give up, to return to our old, unconscious habits, can be immense. What is it that allows a person to continue on the path during these long stretches of spiritual dryness? What is the force that allows water, dripping one drop at a time, to eventually wear a hole through solid stone? This is the essential role of discipline and the quiet power of habit. The journey into the landscape of the mind is not a straight, upward climb. It is a path with many seasons. There are springtime moments of fresh discovery and rapid growth, where insights bloom like wildflowers. But there are also long, cold winters of the soul. There are plateaus where the view never seems to change, where the practice feels dry and mechanical, and the initial inspiration has faded into a distant memory. Our mind, the great doubter, begins to whisper, "Is this really working? I still get angry. I still worry. I'm no different than when I started. Maybe this is all a waste of time." This is the point on the path where many turn back. It is here that the initial, romantic enthusiasm is no longer enough. It is here that we must call upon a quieter, more steadfast quality, the power of gentle, compassionate discipline. In our culture, which celebrates grand gestures and overnight success, the power of small, consistent actions is often overlooked. But on the spiritual path, it is everything. The transformation of consciousness does not happen in a single, lightning flash moment of insight. It happens through the slow, patient, and unremarkable accumulation of moments of practice. The image given by the masters is that of water dripping on a stone. The first drop seems to have no effect. 1,000 drops seem to have no effect. But if the dripping continues, day after day, year after year, that gentle, persistent action will wear a hole through the hardest granite. Our daily practice is this water. Our conditioned, habitual mind is this stone. Each sit may feel insignificant, but it is the unwavering consistency that brings about profound change. The most skillful way to cultivate this consistency is to make the practice so accessible that it is harder to avoid than to do. We often fail because we set impossibly heroic goals. We declare, "I will meditate for 1 hour every single day." After a few successful days, we miss one, and the voice of the inner critic declares the entire project a failure, and we give up completely. A wiser approach is to value consistency far more than duration. Commit to sitting for just 5 minutes a day. Everyone has 5 minutes. The goal is not to have a peaceful sit, or a blissful sit, or an insightful sit. The only goal is to show up and sit for 5 minutes. The victory is achieved the moment you take your seat. By making the hurdle ridiculously low, you bypass the mind's resistance and you begin to build the most important thing of all, the habit. The neurological pathways of practice begin to form. 5 minutes a day, done with consistency, is infinitely more powerful than 1 hour a week. To support this habit, we can create a sacred space. This does not require an elaborate altar or a dedicated room. It can be a simple corner of your bedroom. It can be one particular cushion that is used only for your practice. It can be a small table with a single candle or a flower. Our minds are deeply associative. By creating a physical space dedicated to stillness, we send a powerful signal to our brain. When we enter that space, when we sit on that cushion, our body and mind begin to understand. This is the time for quiet. This is the time for practice. This ritual helps to automate the process, reducing our reliance on willpower, which is a finite resource. The space itself becomes an invitation, a reminder of our deepest intention. There is an old and inspiring story about a young student who, after years of study, became discouraged by his slow progress. Believing he was not intelligent enough, he decided to abandon his training and return to his home village. On the long journey back, he came across a small stream where an old woman was patiently rubbing a thick iron bar against a large rock. The student, intrigued, approached her. "Grandmother," he asked, "may I ask what you are doing?" The old woman looked up, her eyes clear and bright. "I am making a needle," she said simply. The student couldn't help but laugh. "A needle? From this enormous iron bar? Grandmother, that is impossible. You will labor your entire life and never succeed." The old woman offered him a gentle, unwavering smile. "My son," she said, "the only thing that matters is that I do not stop." In that moment, the student was struck as if by a bolt of lightning. He saw his own impatience, his own lack of faith in the process of gradual effort. He bowed to the old woman, turned around without a word, and walked back to his place of study, where he eventually became a great and wise scholar. Our untamed, reactive mind is that coarse iron bar. Our daily, 5-minute practice is the gentle, patient grinding against the stone of reality. Each session may feel fruitless, but as long as we do not stop, the impossible begins to happen. The coarse iron is slowly, imperceptibly ground down, refined, and sharpened into the fine, strong needle of a concentrated and penetrating awareness. This brings us to the true meaning of discipline. We often associate the word with harshness, with punishment, with a rigid, joyless self-control. But in this context, discipline is one of the highest forms of self-love. It is the wise and loving parent within us, saying a firm but gentle no to the impulsive, comfort-seeking child of our mind that just wants another hit of distraction. When the voice of laziness or procrastination arises, "I'm too tired today, I'll do it tomorrow," what's the point? We don't meet it with self-criticism. Berating ourselves for being lazy is just another form of violence, another second arrow. Instead, we meet it with compassionate firmness. We acknowledge the resistance. "I see you," feeling of laziness. "I hear you," voice of doubt. And then, with the kindness of a parent guiding a child to do what is best for them, we gently guide ourselves to the cushion. We honor our commitment to our own freedom. We are saying, through our actions, "My long-term peace and liberation are more important to me than my short-term desire for comfort." This is not punishment. This is devotion to our own deepest well-being. The path of awakening is not a sprint. It is a pilgrimage that lasts a lifetime. The transformative power is not found in occasional, heroic bursts of effort, but in the quiet, humble, and unglamorous rhythm of our daily commitment. It is the water dripping. It is the patient grinding. It is the gentle, unwavering discipline that is born not of self-hatred, but of a profound and abiding self-love. As we establish this steady practice, our inner world begins to stabilize. The cushion becomes a reliable sanctuary, a place of refuge and clarity. We have built a small monastery within our own heart. But the ultimate purpose of a monastery is not to hide from the world. It is to cultivate the strength and wisdom needed to engage with the world compassionately and effectively. The next step, then, is to learn how to keep the doors of this inner monastery open at all times, to carry its silence and clarity out into the noisy, chaotic, and beautiful marketplace of our everyday lives. The daily, disciplined act of sitting on the cushion builds for us an inner monastery. It becomes a sanctuary of silence and clarity, a place of refuge we can return to each day to strengthen our minds and open our hearts. But a monastery is not a fortress designed to keep the world out. It is a training ground designed to prepare us to engage with the world more wisely and compassionately. The ultimate purpose of our formal sitting practice is to learn how to live skillfully when we are off the cushion. The goal is to eventually dissolve the boundary between our meditation time, and our real life, so that every moment, every activity becomes a seamless expression of mindful awareness. We must learn how to carry the silence of the monastery into the chaotic, vibrant, and often overwhelming marketplace of our daily lives. The first step in this journey of integration is to bring awareness to the most fundamental of human actions, walking. We walk thousands of steps every day, but almost always on autopilot. Our body is moving through space, but our mind is lost somewhere else, replaying the past, rehearsing the future, caught in a web of thought. Walking meditation is the practice of reuniting the mind and the body with each step. It is not about walking in a strange, slow-motion way. It is simply about bringing your attention to the physical sensations of the act itself. As you walk, whether it is down a city street, across an office floor, or in your own home, you can feel the sensation of your foot lifting off the ground. You can notice the feeling of it moving through the air. You can then bring your full attention to the feeling of your heel, making contact with the earth, the sensation rolling through the ball of your foot, and finally to your toes. You can feel the subtle transfer of weight from one leg to the other. With each step, you are anchoring yourself in the present moment. Each footfall becomes a gentle bell of mindfulness, calling you home to the here and now. This simple practice transforms the mundane act of getting from one place to another into a profound experience of embodied presence. We can apply this same principle to another daily ritual, eating. Most of us eat in a state of complete distraction. We eat while scrolling through our phones, watching television, or working at our desks. We shovel food into our mouths, barely tasting it, treating the act of eating as a mere refueling stop. Mindful eating is an invitation to turn this routine into a rich, sensory celebration of life. You can try this with a single meal, or even just a single piece of fruit. First, simply look at the food. Observe its colors, its shape, its textures, as if you have never seen such a thing before. Then, feel its weight and texture in your hand. Before you eat, bring it to your nose and truly smell its aroma. When you finally take a bite, chew slowly. Notice the explosion of different flavors. Is it sweet, sour? Is it juicy? What is the texture against your tongue? As you chew, you can also reflect with gratitude on the vast web of causes and conditions that brought this food to you. The sun, the rain, and the earth that nourished it, the farmer who grew it, the person who transported it, the one who prepared it. Suddenly, a simple act becomes a moment of profound connection with the entire cosmos. You are no longer just consuming calories, you are participating in a miracle. There is a classic Zen story that perfectly captures this integration of practice into life. A young student, full of ambition, approached a revered Zen master. "Master," he asked, "I am curious. What was your life like before you experienced enlightenment?" The master replied with utter simplicity, "Before enlightenment, I chopped wood and I carried water." The student was a bit disappointed, expecting a more dramatic tale of spiritual feats. He asked again, "Well then, what is your life like now, after you have achieved enlightenment?" The master smiled, his eyes calm and clear. "After enlightenment," he said, "I chop wood and I carry water." The student was completely bewildered. "But master," he stammered, "what then is the difference?" The master replied, "The difference is this. Before enlightenment, when I was chopping wood, my mind was thinking about carrying water. And when I was carrying water, my mind was busy planning what to cook for dinner. Now, when I chop wood, there is only chopping wood. When I carry water, there is only carrying water." This is the heart of the practice. Enlightenment is not an escape from the ordinary tasks of our life. It is the ability to be fully, completely, and wholeheartedly present for those ordinary tasks. The activities do not change. We still have to work, to cook, to clean, to care for our families. What changes is the quality of our awareness. We learn to bring our whole being to each moment, imbuing the mundane with the sacred. We can practice this anywhere. We can practice listening meditation, allowing the sounds of the city, the traffic, the voices, the construction to be a kind of symphony, receiving them without judgment. We can also learn to find and cherish the countless micro-meditations that are scattered throughout our day. These are the little gaps, the pauses we usually fill with anxious thought or digital distraction. The moment you are waiting for a kettle to boil, the time you are standing in a line at the store, the 30 seconds you are waiting for a traffic light to change, the ride up in an elevator. Instead of instinctively reaching for your phone in these moments, you can use them as a bell of mindfulness. You can take one conscious breath, feel your feet on the floor, reconnect with your body. These tiny pauses are like hitting a reset button for your nervous system. They are stitches of awareness that, one by one, weave the fabric of your day into a mindful whole. The cushion in our quiet room is the gymnasium where we train the muscle of attention. But our life, with all its noise, its demands, and its beauty, is the arena where the game is played. The aim of the practice is to eventually erase the line between the gym and the arena, between the monastery and the marketplace. By transforming our walking, our eating, our listening, and all the small moments in between into opportunities for practice, we discover that peace is not something that can only be found in a special, silent place. It is a quality of mind, a way of being that we can carry within our own hearts, no matter where we are or what we are doing. As we become more present for the simple, ordinary moments of our life, something remarkable begins to happen. We start to notice a quiet beauty and a subtle joy in things we were once blind to. Our happiness is no longer held hostage, waiting for some big, future event to occur. It begins to bubble up from within, in the most unexpected of places. This leads us to explore the very nature of this simple, present moment happiness and how to find it in the smile of a single wildflower. As we learn to walk through our lives with more presence, infusing our daily activities with a quiet awareness, a natural consequence begins to emerge. Our relationship with happiness itself begins to change. In our modern culture, we are taught to think of happiness as a grand prize, a spectacular event. We pursue it like hunters, seeking intense peak experiences, the thrilling vacation, the passionate romance, the major career victory, the euphoric party. We live for the fireworks, the mountaintop moments. But this approach to happiness is exhausting and ultimately unsustainable. A life spent chasing highs is a life that is also defined by the inevitable lows that follow. It is a roller coaster of excitement and disappointment. The wisdom traditions of the world offer a different path. They teach that true, abiding happiness is not a loud explosion, but a quiet, steady flame. It is not found in the extraordinary, but in a radical appreciation of the ordinary. To understand this, we must first distinguish between pleasure and genuine happiness, or what in the Buddhist tradition is called sukha. Pleasure is dependent on external things. It arises when our senses come into contact with something agreeable, the taste of delicious food, the sound of beautiful music, the feeling of a comfortable chair, the receiving of a compliment. Pleasure is wonderful, but it is, by its very nature, impermanent. The food is eaten, the song ends, the compliment fades. Because it relies on fleeting, external conditions, a life dedicated solely to the pursuit of pleasure is a life of endless chasing, a life lived on the hedonic treadmill, always needing the next fix to feel good. True happiness, or sukha, on the other hand, is an inner state of well-being that is not dependent on external circumstances. It is a deep sense of contentment, peace, and fulfillment that arises from a mind that is balanced and at ease. It is not the loud crash of a cymbal, but the beautiful, resonant silence between the notes. It is the joy that is available when the mind is no longer at war with itself, when it is not lost in craving or aversion, when it is simply resting in the present moment. This is not a happiness that you must acquire from the outside world. It is a happiness that you uncover from within. There is a profound Zen story that perfectly illustrates the power of finding joy in the present moment, even in the most dire of circumstances. A person is walking through the mountains when suddenly they are confronted by a ferocious tiger. They turn and run for their life, the tiger chasing close behind. They come to the edge of a great cliff and, with no other choice, they grab onto a thick vine and swing themselves down over the abyss. As they hang there, clinging for dear life, they look up and see the snarling tiger pacing at the cliff's edge above. They look down and see another hungry tiger waiting for them on the ground below. Their situation is utterly hopeless. Then, out of a crevice in the cliff face, two small mice appear in white, one black. They begin to systematically gnaw away at the vine the person is holding. The white mouse and the black mouse represent day and night, the relentless passage of time that is eating away at the fragile thread of life itself. Death is now not just certain, but imminent. In this moment of absolute terror, trapped between the tigers of the past and the future, with the vine of life about to snap, the person notices something just within arm's reach. Growing out of the side of the cliff is a small wild strawberry plant, and on it hangs a single, perfect, ruby red berry. Holding onto the vine with one hand, the person carefully reaches out with the other, plucks the strawberry, and brings it to their lips. The story ends with a single, simple sentence: "How sweet it tasted." This story is a powerful teaching. If that person, in that moment of ultimate peril, could still access the profound and simple joy of tasting a single strawberry, what does that say about us in our lives of relative safety and comfort? It teaches us that joy is not a product of our external circumstances. It is a product of where we place our attention. We are surrounded at every moment by wild strawberries, by small, ordinary miracles, but our minds are so often focused on the tiger of past regrets, and the tiger of future anxieties, that we are completely blind to the sweetness that is available right here, right now. When the mind is calmed through the practice of meditation, it is like wiping a thick layer of dust from the lens of our perception. Our senses come alive. We begin to notice the world with the fresh, curious eyes of a child. We see the impossibly intricate patterns of frost on a window pane. We feel the simple pleasure of warm water on our hands as we wash dishes. We hear the complex, layered symphony of sounds outside our window. We notice the genuine warmth in a stranger's fleeting smile. These are the wild strawberries of our daily life. The great spiritual teacher, Thich Nhat Hanh, taught that we should learn to drink our tea as if it is the most important event in the world, because in that moment, it is. The practice of simple joy is the practice of bringing our full, appreciative, and undivided attention to these ordinary miracles. This practice is the direct antidote to the great affliction of modern life, the "I'll be happy when" syndrome. I'll be happy when I get the promotion. I'll be happy when I lose 10 pounds. I'll be happy when I'm on vacation. This way of thinking is a recipe for a life half-lived. It perpetually postpones happiness, placing it in a hypothetical future that, even when it arrives, is quickly replaced by a new set of conditions. The practice of finding joy in simple things breaks this spell. It is the radical realization that the conditions for happiness are not waiting for us in the future. They are here now. The capacity to feel the warmth of the sun on your skin is here now. The ability to taste your food is here now. The miracle of your own breathing is here now. Happiness is not a destination at the end of a long and difficult road. It is a way of walking the road, a way of seeing the wildflowers that grow along the path. True, sustainable happiness, then, is not the result of a frantic chase for pleasure. It is the natural radiance of a mind that has come to rest. It is the joy that arises when we stop struggling and simply allow ourselves to be present with the life that is unfolding in this moment. It is the sweetness of the strawberry, a sweetness that is always available if only we have the presence of mind to notice and to taste it. As we cultivate this ability to find contentment within ourselves, in the simple act of being, we develop a profound inner resource. This resource becomes the key to facing one of our deepest and most pervasive fears, the fear of being alone. In a world that glorifies constant connection, we have come to equate solitude with the pain of loneliness. But what if this inner contentment could transform our relationship with being by ourselves? What if solitude could cease to be a source of fear and become instead a source of deep nourishment, freedom, and joy? As we cultivate the capacity to find joy within the simple, present moment, we unlock the key to one of the most profound freedoms a human being can experience: the freedom from the fear of being alone. We live in a hyper-connected world, a world of constant communication and social performance. Yet, paradoxically, many of us feel more isolated than ever before. We are terrified of the silence that falls when the screens go dark and the conversations end. We have come to equate the physical state of being alone with the painful emotional state of loneliness, and so we flee from solitude as if it were a disease, filling every spare moment with noise, distraction, and often with shallow connections that only amplify our sense of being unseen. But the path of wisdom teaches us that learning to be alone, truly and deeply comfortable in our own company, is not a curse. It is the foundation for a life of inner peace and authentic connection with others. It is essential, first, to make a clear distinction between loneliness and solitude. Loneliness is an inner experience of painful disconnection. It is the feeling of being cut off, misunderstood, or lacking companionship. You can be surrounded by people at a party, or even be in a long-term relationship and feel profoundly lonely. Loneliness is a state of the heart, a feeling of lack. Solitude, on the other hand, is simply a physical state. It is the condition of being by oneself. It is neutral. Our culture has taught us to fear it, to believe that being alone will inevitably lead to feeling lonely. The spiritual path is the process of severing this automatic link. It is the discovery that we can be alone without being lonely. We can, in fact, find solitude to be a rich, nourishing, and deeply joyful experience. Why do we fear being alone? We fear it because we are left with the unfiltered company of our own minds. And for many of us, our own mind is not a pleasant companion. It is like being locked in a small room with someone who is relentlessly critical, anxious, and negative. The monkey mind chatters, the inner critic judges, the ghosts of the past and phantoms of the future parade before us. Of course, we want to escape that, but our practice has been a systematic training in transforming this inner relationship. The mindfulness of the breath provides a calm anchor in the storm. The practice of observing thoughts allows us to see the inner chatter without believing it. Acceptance gives us the courage to be with uncomfortable feelings. And most importantly, the practice of metta, of loving kindness for ourselves, teaches us how to offer our own being the same warmth and unconditional friendship we would offer to a loved one. When you can be your own source of compassion, you are never truly alone. The practice of meditation is the practice of becoming your own best friend. And when you are genuinely happy in your own company, solitude ceases to be a threat and becomes an invitation. There is a beautiful story of a young monk who was told by his master to go and meditate for a week by himself in a remote corner of the forest. The monk was filled with fear. "Master, I cannot," he pleaded. "I will be terrified. I will be crushed by the loneliness." The master looked at him with great kindness. "But how can you be lonely?" he asked. "You will have the best companions." The monk looked confused. The master continued, "Listen carefully. The sound of the wind whispering in the pine needles will be your friend. The feeling of the cool, damp earth beneath your feet will be your friend. The sight of the moonlight painting silver on the forest floor will be your friend. The steady, faithful rhythm of your own breath will be your dearest and most constant friend of all. Go now and get to know your companions." The lesson is profound. When we are fully present, we are in an intimate relationship with the entire universe in that moment. The rustle of a leaf, the warmth of the sun, the feeling of our own aliveness, these become our trusted friends. The world ceases to be a collection of dead objects and becomes a living, breathing presence with which we are in constant communion. When we no longer fear solitude, we can begin to seek it out intentionally as a source of great nourishment. In our busy, extroverted world, we often forget that our energy is a finite resource. Constant social interaction, for all its joys, can be deeply draining. Intentional solitude is the way we recharge our spiritual and psychological batteries. It is a time to let the nervous system settle, to come back to our own center. It is also the fertile ground for creativity and deep insight. It is no accident that so many great artists, writers, thinkers, and mystics have cherished their time alone. It is in the quiet, when the noise of other people's opinions and expectations fades away, that we can finally hear the subtle whisper of our own intuition, the true voice of our own heart. Solitude is where we recalibrate our inner compass and remember who we are, separate from the roles we play in the world. Perhaps the most beautiful paradox of all is that by learning to be happy alone, we become far better at being with others. When we enter into relationships from a place of fear, the fear of being alone, we are operating from a place of neediness and lack. We look to another person to fill our emptiness, to be the source of our happiness, to save us from ourselves. This places an impossible burden on them and creates the foundation for anxious, codependent, and ultimately unsatisfying relationships. But when we are content in our own solitude, when our cup is already full, with our own presence and self-compassion, we can enter into relationships from a place of strength and wholeness. We are not looking for someone to complete us. We are looking to share our completeness with them. We connect with others, not out of a desperate need to escape ourselves, but out of a genuine desire to share our joy. Our relationships become freer, more authentic, and more loving because our happiness is no longer held hostage by the other person's actions or attention. We can love them for who they are, not just for what they provide for us. To embrace solitude, then, is not an antisocial act. It is a vital act of self-possession and inner cultivation. It is the ability to stand peacefully in our own center, to find a home within our own being, and to know that in this home, we are already whole and complete. As we master this art, as we weave together all the threads of our practice, mindfulness, acceptance, compassion, gratitude, and presence in our daily lives, new way of moving through the world begins to emerge. It is a way of being that is less driven by anxious effort and more characterized by a kind of spontaneous, graceful flow. It is the culmination of all our training, where our actions begin to arise not from a place of struggle, but from a deep alignment with life itself. This is the art of living like water. We have traveled a long and winding path together. We began in the noisy, restless prison of the modern mind, a mind terrified of silence. We found our anchor in the simple, faithful rhythm of the breath. We learned to sit and watch the ceaseless parade of our thoughts and feelings, seeing them not as ourselves, but as clouds passing in a vast, open sky. We confronted the great truths of existence, the universal law of impermanence, the radical illusion of a separate self, and the pervasive friction of dukkha. We then began to cultivate the garden of our heart, planting the seeds of acceptance, loving kindness, and gratitude. We have explored how to carry these qualities into our work, our relationships, and our moments of solitude. We have learned to sit with the desert of boredom and the fire of anger. So, we must ask, what is the culmination of all this practice? What is the fruit of this long journey? The answer is not that we become rigid, pious, or removed from life. The true fruit of the path is a quality of being that is so profound, so simple, and so revolutionary that it can only be described as a kind of effortlessness. It is the discovery of a new way to move through the world, not with force and struggle, but with grace, spontaneity, and ease. In the ancient tradition of Taoism, this state is known by the term Wu Wei. While the term is from a different school of thought, its spirit perfectly captures the essence of a liberated mind. Wu Wei is often translated as non-doing or non-action, but this can be misleading. It does not mean being passive, lazy, or inert. A better translation would be effortless action, or action that arises from a place of no struggle. It is the state of being where our actions are in perfect, harmonious alignment with the flow of life itself. To understand Wu Wei, we must first look at its opposite, the way we usually operate. Most of our actions are driven by the anxious, calculating ego. We act from a place of tension. We are constantly striving, forcing, and resisting. We worry about the outcome. We fear failure. We crave recognition for our efforts. There is a sense of an isolated me trying to impose its will upon the world. This is like trying to row a boat against a powerful current. It is exhausting, inefficient, and creates a great deal of inner friction. Wu Wei is the opposite. It is the state that arises when the striving ego gets out of the way. Action is no longer born from frantic thought, but from a place of deep, intuitive stillness. After a long period of practice, mindfulness ceases to be something we do and becomes something we are. We respond to the needs of the moment spontaneously, just as our eyes spontaneously blink when dust flies toward them. There is no internal debate. There is just an appropriate, graceful response. We can see glimpses of Wu Wei all around us. Think of a masterful musician improvising a beautiful solo. They are not consciously thinking, now I will play a C sharp, then a G. If they were, the music would be stilted and lifeless. Instead, they are in a state of flow, listening deeply to the music around them and allowing the notes to play through them. The doer and the doing have become one. Think of a great athlete at the peak of their performance, often described as being in the zone. A basketball player does not have time to calculate the arc of their shot. Their body, trained by thousands of hours of practice, simply knows what to do. The conscious, thinking mind gets out of the way, and a deeper wisdom takes over. This is Wu Wei in action. It is not an absence of activity, but an absence of inner conflict during activity. There is a story of a traveler who needed to cross a river with notoriously dangerous and swirling rapids. He was terrified. He saw an old boatman who seemed to navigate these treacherous waters every day with a remarkable sense of ease. The traveler hired him. As their small boat entered the churning water, the traveler tensed up, gripping the sides, his mind racing with fear. But the old boatman was completely relaxed. He did not paddle furiously against the current. In fact, he seemed to be hardly paddling at all. He would yield to a powerful eddy, allowing it to turn the boat for him. He would use the force of a strong current to propel them forward, using his oar only for a gentle guiding touch here and there. He was not fighting the river, he was dancing with it. When they arrived safely on the other side, the amazed traveler asked him, "How is it that you navigate such a violent force with so little effort?" The boatman smiled. He said, "To fight the river is foolishness. The river is always stronger than you. The secret is to understand the river's nature, to feel its energy, and to use its own power to take you where you want to go. I do not command the river, I listen to it. Life is this river, with its unpredictable currents of joy and sorrow, success and failure. The ego wants to fight the river, to command it, to force it to go where it wants. This is a life of constant struggle. The practitioner of Wu Wei, like the old boatman, learns to stop fighting. They learn to feel the currents of life with sensitive awareness. They yield when necessary, they are firm when necessary, and they use the energy of the situations they are in, rather than wasting their own energy in resistance. This is not laziness. The boatman was intensely alert and skillful. It is the highest form of intelligence. It is knowing when to act and when to refrain from acting. It is understanding that the greatest power is found not in force, but in wise and graceful yielding. This state of effortless action is the ultimate paradox and the beautiful result of our practice of just sitting. By courageously practicing doing nothing, by learning to be still and present without an agenda, we unlearn our lifelong habits of striving and resistance. We untie the knots of tension in our own minds, and from that place of profound stillness and non-resistance, a new kind of action is born. It is action that is effective, creative, and joyful. It is free from the heavy burden of the ego. It is the art of living like water, which is the softest and most yielding thing in the world, yet has the power to overcome the hardest stone, not through force, but by patiently, persistently flowing around it. It is learning to dance with the 10,000 joys and 10,000 sorrows of life, with a light step and a quiet heart. Having journeyed through the entire landscape of the mind from its frantic chatter to this state of graceful easlet, us now pause and gather the wisdom of the entire path into a final, heartfelt conclusion. We began this journey together in a quiet, dimly lit room, illuminated only by the cold, blue light of a screen. We began with the feeling of a mind that was both exhausted and restless, a heart that was both full of information and empty of meaning. We recognized ourselves in the frantic, endless scroll, in the quiet desperation of a life spent running from the silence. We saw that we were living in a prison of our own making, a prison of constant doing, endless wanting, and a deep, unspoken fear of simply being. From that place of dis-ease, we embarked upon a path. We turned our attention away from the noise of the world and toward the quiet miracle of our own breath, discovering in it an anchor that could hold us steady in any storm. We found the courage to simply sit, to let go of our striving and our agendas, and to trust in the wisdom of stillness. In that stillness, we learned to watch the ceaseless weather of our minds, seeing our thoughts not as absolute truths, but as harmless clouds drifting through the vast, open sky of our awareness. We looked deeply into the nature of our experience and saw for ourselves the universal truths of impermanence and non-self, realizing that our suffering comes not from life itself, but from our futile struggle against its natural flow. With this understanding as our foundation, we learned to put down the hot coal of anger and to invite our most difficult emotions in for tea. We cultivated the beautiful, healing qualities of the heart, beginning with the unconditional friendship of loving kindness for ourselves and extending it outward to all beings. We discovered the beggar's treasure of gratitude, learning to see the profound richness that is already present in our ordinary lives. We then carried these tools off the cushion and into the marketplace, transforming our work, our relationships, our communication, and even our solitude into a seamless, living practice. We learned, finally, that the culmination of all this effort is a state of effortlessness, a way of moving through the world with the grace and wisdom of flowing water. The journey has been long, but its central message is profoundly simple. The peace, the contentment, the freedom we so desperately seek is not located in some future destination. It is not hidden in a new relationship, a better job, or a material possession. The frantic search for peace, out there, is the very activity that perpetuates our restlessness. The great secret of the path is that there is nowhere to go and nothing to acquire. The peace you are looking for is the very peace that arises when you stop looking. It is the natural state of a mind that is no longer at war with itself. It is the silence that is waiting for you beneath the noise. In a world that screams for you to do more, to be more, to have more, the most powerful, radical, and healing act you can perform is to simply, and with great dignity, do nothing, to just sit. And so, you are left with everything you need. You do not need a special temple on a distant mountain. Your own body is your temple. You do not need a guru to give you the answers. Your own breath is your most faithful teacher. You do not need to escape your life to find peace. Your daily life, with all its beauty and all its challenges, is your monastery. The path is not about becoming a different, better person. It is about gently, patiently, unbecoming everything that you are not, and returning to the quiet, spacious, and loving awareness that has been your true nature all along. The journey of 1,000 miles begins with a single step. Your journey to freedom begins with this single gentle instruction. Just sit